We'll go ahead and get started. First of all, I'd say welcome again to the March 21st, 2019 meeting of the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners. The first thing is on our agenda today is the flag salute, and I'll go ahead and lead the flag salute myself since I got the commissioners in the last two. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Just a couple little housekeeping things. Say that if you have a cell phone, we ask that you put it on silent and you abstain from taking or sending text mails while you're in here or emails. If you do have to make a phone call or if you do have to respond to a message, we ask that you go out in the hallway and do that, please. So this is the time now we go to public comment, and this 30-minute time period is reserved for public comment on any topic other than A, an agenda item, 2, a quasi-judicial land use matter, 3, a topic of scheduled for a public hearing. And then, you know, since we have a lot of people here, we'll try to move through these. I do have a couple general public comments that are non-agenda items, and so we'll move on with those first. So I have, first one I have is Barry Lilly. Barry, you want to come up? Welcome back, Barry.
Thank you, sir. My name is Barry Lilly. I live at 629 Northwest Jason Court in McMinnville. I have a request from our county leadership this morning. I belong to a group that meets the third Wednesday every month for lunch at Chan's Restaurant. And the young man that has been our server / waiter for I can't remember how long just became a U.S. citizen. So I brought a card and I'm going to ask that our county leadership sign it for him. His name is Hang. It's spelled with an I like Hing, but his name is Hang. But I thought, you know, and yesterday we got Senator Merkley to sign a card for him. So that was really cool. So I'll leave this and I will pick it up tomorrow maybe or so. Because you look like you're going to be busy.
Certainly, Barry. Why don't you go ahead and read it for us then? And
okay, it says, America is lucky to have a new citizen like you. You put a lot of time, energy, and heart into achieving this goal, and you deserve to feel very proud of yourself. Celebrating this moment, celebrating you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, and thank you for
very nice
you're
job
out
for
there
doing that,
and
Barry.
You're helping people, and we just heard from you last week. We did look into that,
Thank you.
and but thank you for carrying. That's a wonderful something to celebrate when somebody cares enough about our country to acknowledge the importance of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
Okay, the next one I have is Margaret Cross. So Margaret, do you want to come on forward wherever you are? Is Margaret back out in the hall? Margaret Cross.
I don't see her here. So.
Maybe she didn't. Maybe she didn't stay.
Oh.
Okay.
Might take a while.
That's right. We'll give Margaret a chance to get up here.
She said it was on an agenda item.
Oh,
It's an agenda item.
it's an agenda.
Well, she has both.
They're both agenda items. They're both.
Well, no, one's a general. Oh, wait a minute. Budget committee. Yeah, they're both.
Sorry, I was hanging out
Well,
in the
that's-
library waiting for the agenda item to come up.
Well, that's all right, Margaret. You find a place to sit in here. You're going to still wait for those to come up. It was on the general pile, and you do have two agenda
But it's
topics.
good to know you're here.
But
Thank
Margaret,
you.
it's nice to know that you walked all the way up here to see
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so should I?
if there's a place to sit in here, fine. If not, we'll make sure when you go.
Somebody else?
There's this chair. I think there's a
There's a
chair
spot
right
right
over
there.
here, Margaret.
Okay.
If you'd
I'll
like to
go
sit
get
over
my
there.
purse and I'll come here. I'm sorry to disrupt you.
Oh no, that's fine. Okay, then the next general comment we have is Jerry Carlton. So Jerry, Is Jerry Carlton out in the hallway, please? Come on forward, Jerry. And if you can have a seat and state your name and your address for the and state your name and address for the digital record, please.
Jerry Carlton, 606 Southeast Rummel, McMinnville. I just asked my question.
Yeah, you can ask.
I just
Go
wondered
ahead
how
and
many
comment.
people were offended by having to go through the screening to get into this building. Did it hurt anybody? Did it cause any problems for anybody? Why can't we do that on a bigger level? To screen people and see if they're okay before we allow them to carry guns.
Well, we do screen for firearms at the front.
Well, I mean, in general, everywhere, in McMinnville and Idaho and Oregon. Why should we be limited to just screening people coming into this room? Why can't we find out who's carrying guns and make sure they're not out in the public where we don't want them like a target or?
Yeah, but so
Why
Mr.
not?
Chair,
That's-
Mr. Chair, public comment is really for it's opportunity for you to make comment. It's not really a question and answer session for you and the board. So you feel free to make the comment that you'd like, but that's generally how we try to manage the public comment
I've never
period.
done this before.
Okay, that's fine.
Thanks for coming. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Jerry.
Carlton. Okay, I think that's all the actual cards I have for general comment. Everything else I have for agenda items. Does anybody had anything on a general comment that wasn't on an agenda item? No, thanks, McKaylee. Okay, moving forward then, we move to our consent agenda. The first thing on our consent agenda is the approval of an agreement between the Yamhill County Clerk's Office and Hart Civic for the purchase, license, and maintenance costs for 10 years of the Valley Vodal Tally System in the amount of $22,681. Total 10-year price of $226,810. And I asked to make was asked by legal counsel to make a modification to that consent agenda, and that would be upon final review and approval by both the clerk and the legal
Well,
counsel.
I would just ask the board to approve that, subject to the final review and approval of county counsel's office. We're still in negotiations with Hart. I expect those to wrap up shortly, but they're not quite ready yet. If there are any material changes to the agreement that's before you today, I'll bring that back to the board.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended by county council.
Okay, just that one particular item is amended by county council. You should want to approve the whole consent agenda? Okay.
Okay.
So Casey, you? Oh, wait a minute, you don't. All those in
No,
favor
no.
signify by saying aye.
I thought I'd nod at least.
Yeah, all those in
Aye.
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let it show that Commissioner Sterrett, Commissioner Coolen, Commissioner Olson all voted unanimously to approve the consent agenda with the one change made to item number B1, and that is regarding the approval of the InterCivic for the purchase, license, and maintenance of vote tally system. Thank you, Commissioners. That takes us to old business. We have no old business. That takes us to other business. Our first thing on other business is a consideration of an appointment of Lindsay Burkhauer to the Yamhill County Budget Committee for a 3-year term to expire June 30th, 22. And I think I have one. I do have Margaret. Now that you wanted two of them, so this is your first chance. So come on up, Margaret.
Okay. My name is Margaret Cross. I live at 1102 Southwest Russ Lane in McMinnville. And you probably remember I was here a few weeks ago with some concerns about the appointment process that was being followed for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. I felt it was flawed, and I expressed those concerns at that time. I'm here today because I think you still have the same problem and it's not being corrected. When I looked at the Budget Committee site, I see that there are 3 positions filled by citizens. One of those terms ended in June of 2018. I don't know if that position has been vacant all this time. I have seen no calls to fill that vacancy. I see another one is going to end in June of this year. So there's still time to do a proper call for applications. I'm here today because I don't think you have followed the process that should be followed of advertising that there is a vacancy on this committee, asking for applicants to apply, and going through an interview process to determine who is best qualified to serve on that committee. To simply say you're going to appoint someone is surely you're right, but I don't think it serves the citizenry when you bypass the process of asking the citizens who might be interested in serving. To this end, I put in an application for that committee yesterday afternoon when I read the agenda and learned of this situation. I'm very willing to serve. I think I do a good job, but I'm more concerned that you not just appoint somebody without going through the process. I really would like you to advertise this position, to request applications, to review the applications, and go through a considered public process. That's what I'm here for today. And I will also note that on that budget site, the last minutes that were published were 2016. Now, I don't know who's responsible for oversight of the websites for the committees. I know it in solid waste. Ashley's working on trying to improve it. I don't know whose job that is, if it's the county administrators, your job, but this needs to be corrected. We cannot have open government without good communication. So I urge you to not do an appointment today, but to go through the proper process. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret.
That's the only one we have agenda items, so let's turn that around to the commission. Casey, let's start with you.
Well, I would agree with Margaret. I think that we should advertise it. I know that we have already received multiple applications, but that we don't put it off, that we move it just to next week's agenda with the possibility of having multiple applicants that we consider.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
Thank you, I appreciate that. One of the things that I've noticed is that there seems to be a misconception that we are skirting the process, that we are doing something underhanded. I noticed that there were lots of Facebook posts, Commissioner, with the idea out there that somehow what we were doing was not above board.
Okay.
What I would like to do is to correct that misconception, because that's exactly what it is. If you look, for instance, let's look at RIAC. RIAC has typically, and Mr. Huffer, maybe you can sort of fill in the blanks here. How have we typically filled positions on the Road Improvement Advisory Committee? It's been one of those things where it's...
I could explain since I've been there at all of them.
Well...
But perhaps Ken Huffer would like to do that.
Yes, if you would, because how have we filled those vacancies typically?
A lot of times it's similar to where you have current RIAC members or that are leaving and they're reaching out to folks, and or a liaison commissioner to that may have somebody who's reached out to them, and then the applications are presented to the committee, and then a recommendation, and then the board approves that.
Okay, so there are recommendations made by current board members based on knowledge of what RIAC is and does, and based on the work that person has done and who they know. I remember when I was liaison to Public Works, and I made a recommendation of somebody who actually had an engineering background when it came to roads. So I wanted to just mention that. In this particular case, the case before us has to do with the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee, per Oregon statute, says that you will have the elected officials and the same number of citizens who serve in an advisory capacity, actually in a voting capacity, on the Budget Committee. We had Chris McLaren, who has served on this committee for 9 years. And we've had a number of people who've served for a long time, Angel Aguiar being another one of them. When Chris made the decision, yes, his term expired in June, but he didn't make the decision he wasn't going to be back with us for budgets until just recently, and notified our administrator to that degree. When he did that, he said, I would like to recommend someone, based on what I know about the position, someone who would be, has qualifications. We discussed that. One of the premier considerations, I think, is that we had somebody with impeccable credentials, an economic investment in this community, a business owner, which is what we like to see on the board. We have business owners, and not government officials. We have government officials represented. Chair Olson made the astute observation that we really have not had people represented from the East County. So here we had a woman who had expressed interest, came highly recommended from somebody who worked and served on this board without any political agenda for 9 years, makes a recommendation. We were all set to go ahead and approve. Immediately, word went out that the county is involved in subterfuge, and we need to get a bunch of applications in, and it's urgent. Forget the fact that, you know, what are your qualifications, what is your agenda, or do we really have the mindset that we're gonna keep it in a political clique? If you're not from McMinnville and you're not in with the political elite, we're not gonna even consider you. No people from Newburgh or nobody who's not politically connected need apply. I'm offended by that. We have an applicant who is ready to go. We have some time now where we're up against the clock, and our decision was, the two commissioners had voted that we were going to approve Lindsay Burschauer to be on our budget committee. Now all of a sudden we've weaponized this, we've politicized this, and Lindsay Burschauer is no longer acceptable because she's from Newburgh and she's not in the political elite. I have to remind everybody that we do not just serve McMinnville. We as a board support and should be encouraging everybody. Newburgh is so disenfranchised from us. They don't even know and have any knowledge of what their county government does. We have an opportunity to do that, but now we're gonna politicize this, and that's where I see this going. I think there are huge conflicts of interest with some of the applicants, and I would just like to say that I would recommend that we move on this appointment of Ms. Burschauer to represent the East County.
You know, after we talked about this our last meeting about appointing Ms. Burschauer to the Budget Committee, it came to my attention, and I've discussed a little bit with staff, when did we exactly know, and when did any staff know that when Chris McLaren was really, we as commissioner became aware of it about 2 weeks ago. It's my understanding that the potentially, and I can't speak for her because she's not here anymore, but the potential that our county administrator did know about this in July when it was conveyed to her from Chris McLaren that he would not be interested in serving another term. I think the problem I see with this whole process is if the terms were up, let's say for this committee, if they up at June for beginning in July, in June of last year we should have been advertising for this position. If Chris wanted to reapply for it, he could have. If Angel wanted to reapply for it, he could have. But I believe that since we're a representative government, that we really should give anybody, and I don't care if you're a business person, I don't care if you're a individual, I don't care what background you come from or what is, that you should have the opportunity to apply, at least apply for a position. Not to mean you'll get the position, but you should have the opportunity to apply for a commission. 2 years ago when I was elected, that's one of the things I brought up because I felt the process was broken, because we have several commissions that we don't look at appointing somebody to until they're almost ready to be appointed, the position is up, or that we have somebody tell us that, oh yeah, I said something 6 months ago that I wasn't going, which is one of the cases with somebody on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. So in that case, I talked to staff a little bit. You know, what I would like to do is have Ken weigh in on this and see if to meet this schedule, and I think Mrs. Burschauer is definitely a good applicant, but I think there could be other good applicants out there also. And I don't want to, since it's if it was only a term to expire at the end of this budget year, I don't have any problem. But we're talking a 2.5 year, basically a 3-year term for the budget, so we're really would not have a potential until Angel decides if he wants to run or not. And of course, I think if somebody wants to continue service, a reappointment, they should always be offered that opportunity to continue with a reappointment. So I guess in this case, and since we have had additional applications that have come in since that date, I think it may cause us a little bit of problem this budget year, and I can let Ken speak to that a little bit, but I'm kind of now leaning towards the fact that I think we should put this out for a open recruitment. It'd be a very tight time frame, but we should put it out for an open recruitment. So Ken, what's your feelings on that?
Oh, hot spot.
Not what's your feelings? Is the timeline doable?
Well,
Right?
one, I'm not going to express feelings or anything. All I'm,
What's your
you know,
facts on it?
or express an opinion. You know, all I'm going to do is just point out that membership on the budget committee, it's defined by statute. Oregon budget law requires that we have an equal number of lay members with the elected body on the budget committee. And so that being said, we have to have 3 budget committee members for the budget committee meeting that takes place starting April 1st. Or no, not April 1st. May 29th.
May 20
or April 29th.
29th.
It's
Yeah.
in April.
Yeah, it's the last
It's
Monday
one of
in
those
April.
dates on that whole long list of meetings.
See, ask me for an opinion and I go off the rails. You know, so it's April 29th for that budget committee. Leading up to that, you know, historically what we've done for when we've had newly appointed budget committee members, you know, they get an opportunity because on April 1st, we really kick off the budget process with the service team presentations, which is not the same as the budget committee, but that's kind of the first run through to where the initial budget is put together and presented, and we make those do that fine tuning before we bring it to the full budget committee. You know, so being able to have the opportunity for a new budget committee member to sit and observe on those, you may recall that Denny Elmer was a new committee member last year, and he came in and was able to see some of the sessions just to get a basic idea of the flow. And then it also allows me time as the budget officer to meet with the individual committee members and you know, because it can be kind of daunting to, as a lay committee member, to suddenly be sitting up here and you're being asked to vote on, make recommendations, make decisions on budget, and then also sitting on the compensation committee, which is another role of the budget committee. You know, so I'm just putting it out as far as, you know, timeline. You know, by statute, we have to have a fully seated budget committee for the April 29th meetings. You know, and I will say that the more time that we're able to give that person in advance that I can meet with and share information, you know, is optimal. You know, because again, you know, being able to, you know, it's a $153 million budget, and as you know, it's a very complex budget, a lot of different program areas, a lot of questions. So being able to present and have that full picture of the budget and understand even how our budget document is organized is really a critical onboarding process with that new committee member.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Casey?
Some follow-up then. I believe Commissioner Steer, and thank you for your lengthy explanation. I am aware of how the Road Advisory Committee does things, but I appreciate you adding more detail from your history with it. I'd like to clarify that there was not a vote by 2 commissioners on Tuesday. Is that accurate?
No, we had 2 commissioners who said that they would approve.
Can't hear you.
I believe Chair Olson
At that
expressed at that time the intention to us to approve the appointment and move it forward.
Right.
That is
So
correct.
I'm just saying that since words matter, especially the words here that we use, that I would wanted to clarify, because you did say that 2 commissioners voted.
2 commissioners came to the conclusion that we would put this for a vote, and the chair stated that he would support this appointment.
Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Casey?
I think that we have enough time and enough applicants to review, and even if we want to hear from them in person on Tuesday, we can hear from them and then move to, what is that, the 28th, to have a recommendation and a vote. And that'll allow, March 28th, that'll allow us to get them here and maybe oriented in time for the April 1st, I think. So that's just my proposal.
Okay, so, we have basically two situations I think we're dealing with, is appointing Lindsay Burschauer to the Budget Committee and looking at how the whole overall process is done in the future for any position going forward. And being the fact that we have gotten, even though it wasn't advertised, we have gotten an additional applications in which we didn't have in at that time when we talked about appointing her. I think we have to honor those applications because the vacancy exists.
Okay.
And I think we need to honor those applications, and we need to do whatever it takes to make sure that at least those people that have put in an application get to be interviewed and considered for the position. So I guess we can, since it's on other business, we can, and Mary, did you make a recommendation that we appoint her already today? I can't remember if you did.
No, that was not a motion, it was a,
Okay,
it was a
motion.
suggestion, it
Right.
was not a motion.
Right.
Okay, I'll accept a motion. Somebody want to make a motion? Casey or Mary or?
Well, I would make a motion that we
Mm-hmm.
consider the appointment of Lindsay Burschauer to the Budget Committee for a 3-year term today.
Okay, we have a recommendation from Commissioner Starrett that we appoint Lindsay.
Do you mean that we consider or that we appoint? Because
We-
you said
or-
consideration of
My
appointment.
motion is to
To
appoint.
Okay, because you said consideration, I just wanted to
Yeah, well,
clarify.
that's the.
Consideration to appoint.
Yes.
Consideration
Yes.
to appoint, so
Yeah.
that's the motion.
Okay, so any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Nay. Let it show that Commissioner Starrett voted for an aye to appoint Lindsay Burschauer to the Yamhill County Budget Committee, and Commissioners Olson and Commissioners Kula voted in opposition. And now we'll talk about the recommendations. We want direct staff to go ahead and get a hold of the other people that have turned in an application, or would you, Casey, and Mary, do we want to actually go ahead and just honor those, or do we want to put out a full advertisement?
I think if we're talking about it right now, I mean, it has been on the agenda, I guess. So, but I think that we should put out a full advertisement. I don't know what that looks like, though. I know that in the past, right now, there's on the volunteer opportunities page, there are vacancies for a number of committees.
Right, but a lot of people don't go to the website. Normally, the
Yeah.
way that a lot of the cities and counties do it is they actually put it in the newspapers that serve that area. So like
Okay.
there would be the Newburgh newspaper, the McMinnville newspaper, potentially the Sheridan, Willamina newspaper, small ads.
Do
So
we have time?
if they got them in, they'd have to get them on
And
Tuesday.
advice from county administrator, do you think we have time?
I do have concerns about if we're gonna do a publication and
Yeah.
an advertisement, like that, the time frame, depending, on how quickly,
Yeah, I want to honor
we
your
can get
budget
something
offers to us.
published and then, outside of the website, if we're published, in the newspaper and knowing that they have deadlines, I'd have to verify, and when the cutoff date would be and when we would schedule the interviews and, so, because I would highlight some of the difficulties, unlike a job recruitment where you have specifications and minimum qualifications and things like that
Yeah.
you meet for committee participation on this type, it's wide open. So, how many folks are gonna submit applications or how many interviews we're gonna have to, I'm not sure.
I guess my recommendation would be is that we only, for this particular recruitment, that we actually interview Lindsay Burschauer and those others that have turned in
I think
those
that's
others
the
that
way
have
to go.
currently turned in an application. I think there's 2 or 3, Ken?
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3, and we limit this position to that, but then we direct staff to come back to us at a later time and review the whole issue of how these appointments are
I
done
think
and
that
how
would
we
be really
advertise them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I would just make a
Commissioner Sarah.
suggestion
Sure.
that we then extend it to end of business day tomorrow for any additional applications.
I think it's a really good
I think
idea.
And
that's
then
Yeah.
see what we get.
Thank
and
you for
then
that.
Open that up that
Okay.
way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
So-
like, there has to be a middle ground between now
So then
and,
can-
ad-
Next
like,
week.
an advertisement. Yeah.
So I don't,
Thank you.
that's a consensus, so I don't think we needed to actually vote on extending it till tomorrow afternoon. That's a consensus.
consensus,
And-
and we'll post something on the website,
Okay.
on the main page of the website.
Okay.
And that they'll
so-
be stay open till tomorrow till,
Thank you, Ken.
yeah, close of business tomorrow.
And how soon do we want to schedule interviews? Next Tuesday, next Thursday?
I would like next Tuesday just to honor your timeline, but
However fast you think we need to get them in, what makes sense.
Okay.
Then we do that, whatever makes sense. The quicker the
Commissioner
better,
Smith, what do
but
you think?
Well, I want to be respectful of the fact that not everybody might be able to make an interview
Yeah.
at a certain time, so we need
Yeah.
to maybe be a little more flexible so that
Right.
we get
Okay.
to hear
Right.
from people.
So we can work, Ken can work with that, and we can work with that internally to see when we're gonna interview those
Okay.
people.
May I say one?
Yeah, Casey.
And I just want to note for everybody out there that we can hear you really well. And I learned this embarrassingly when I was talking to somebody in the back row once upon a time, not that long ago. So if you can keep your conversations down, or if you need to have a conversation, if you can go out into the hallway far away, because we can actually hear you from the hallway too. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Casey. So Margaret, thank you for testifying on that. That will move us on to our next piece of business then
Commissioner
under,
Chair?
under other. yes.
Before we move on, I'd also like to, mention about the minutes.
Okay.
And I'm gonna
Oh,
look, I was just looking and I'm not sure why the 2017 Budget Committee minutes aren't on the website, so I'm gonna follow up with staff and find out,
Okay.
what happened there. As far as last year's minutes, the reason you won't find the 2018 is they haven't been formally approved by the Budget Committee, which is the first action that they do on the first day of the Budget Committee this year. The first action is to approve last year's minutes, and then we would post those minutes to the website.
Ken, could they be, so people could at least look at them, could they be posted as draft minutes so we don't go,
That's not
we
something
don't
we've done in
go
the
8 months
past.
without anybody knowing, and then all of a sudden here now they only.
They're
have
not
a couple.
approved.
I guess
Well,
we
they
could
could-
have
they
a
could be done
follow-up
as
meeting
draft.
to approve them.
The hard
this
part
year,
would be
right?
is if you're posting draft minutes and if something is incorrect that one of you,
Yeah.
there's a
No, we haven't had a
misquote or a
chance to approve.
misstatement and you haven't had a chance to weigh in or get that clarified or
understand.
go back into the
Yeah.
minutes.
Understandable.
That's
Okay.
why we've only posted approved.
When they're approved, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that, so.
Yeah, thank you
But
for
I-
explaining.
But I'll
that.
also find out about where the 2017 minutes are and we'll get that corrected.
Thank you, Ken. That takes on to our next item, and this is consideration of reinstating limited maintenance status to High Heaven Road, rescinding board order 01-809, and I'll turn it over to Christian first.
Did you have anyone who wanted to make public
Well,
comment?
we do have one now here, yes, okay.
Garrett, that's.
Those are
oh,
D3s,
all-
put them at the bottom of
Is
the
that High
D3
Heaven?
stack.
Yes, it is.
That's High Heaven.
Okay, we do have somebody that wants to comment, Garrett Stevenson. So Garrett, now that I got your card, you can come up and sit down.
Thank you for being patient.
Thank you, Chair Olson and Commissioners. My name is Garrett Stevenson, legal counsel for Weyerhaeuser. My address is 1211 Southwest 5th Avenue, Suite 1900, Portland, Oregon 97204. With me today is Betsy Earls, who is staff with Weyerhaeuser. And this is a follow-up to a hearing I guess we had about a month ago at which the board decided to require that Weyerhaeuser reopen and lock open the gates to High Heaven Road. And as County Council mentioned, our direction was to go forward and work together and see if we could take a second look at the maintenance responsibility for that road. I really appreciate County Council's work on this. We've worked together. And what's before you today is a proposal that basically restores the status quo ante of maintenance on High Heaven Road before the gates were allowed to be closed. And we think that's a fair decision. We had only 2 recommendations to change, and they're very, very minor, to change the board order that's in front of you today, one of which is to allow the county the authorization to spend the that the high range of costs that your Public Works Department estimated for maintenance, and the other one is to take, basically insert a goal of taking a look at this in 3 years in terms of what maintenance needs to be done. But with that, we very much support the proposal in front of you today. We really appreciate the board taking up this second step, and again, very much appreciate County Council's work on this. With that, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, good morning. I think I would just like to reiterate that we recommend that you authorize spending up to the highest point that you have in the proposed order, because of the experience we have had up there on that road and around it with maintenance needs and other things being left that will cost money to take out. So we urge you to be generous.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Do you want to go ahead and give us the options we have?
Sure.
Christian?
Well, yeah, in the board order that's before you, it would authorize Public Works to spend up to a maximum of $40,000 for maintenance. The high end of the estimate would be $46,000, so the difference of $6,000. And then in the second to the last whereas clause, it does state that those costs are based on performing that maintenance every 3 to 5 years. There is no reference to that maintenance being performed every 3 to 4 years in the actual statement of the order itself. So I believe those were the recommended revisions from Weyerhaeuser, and if the board chooses to accept those, I would make sure that those were added into the revised document before you signed it.
Okay, Casey?
I think that sounds great, personally. Thank you very much. Thank you for working with County Council, and thank you, Christian, for working on
Any
this.
questions, Mary?
No, thank you.
No, so I think, if the board, what we need to do is now is direct staff, if we want to incorporate those changes proposed by
Yeah,
Weyerhaeuser.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think you could consider this board order, as revised, and go ahead and vote on the.
Yeah.
The revised board order.
I move that we approve the board order as revised.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, let it show that it's unanimously approved by the Board of Commissioners. So thank you, Derek.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I just got to note that we're going to take just about, you can stay in your seats, about a 5-minute recess, because we want to make sure we can get, they think they know what's wrong with the back, that we can get the back speakers working also. So we're going to take about a 5-minute break. If you want to get up and just stretch until we get started with our next item. We have, Dave, you all ready? Okay. We have item number D3, and that's consideration of declaring Yamhill County a Second Amendment sanctuary county. We do have a lot of people to provide testimony, so what I'm going to ask to do is I will ask 2 people to come up and at the same time, and when one's finished, then the other one can give their testimony. So we'll have to pass the mic back and forth, because we'll want to make sure we get everybody. And what I'll try to do is, if you're going to say something exactly what the other person said, just say, I agree with this person, or what. If you want to give your own testimony, you're free to do so, certainly. But if you want to just say that this is what I agree with, you can do that also. So it's totally up to you what you want to testify for. So the first one, I'm going to go out of order just on this first one, and I'll have, since she's been so nice, Margaret Cross. Now she's out in the back room, isn't she? Well, Margaret, I'm going to let you come up.
This is your third time to the podium here.
And then when you're done, I'll call. Then when you're done, I'll call 2 up.
My apologies. Too many opinions. Okay. My name is Margaret Cross. I live at 1102 Southwest Russ Lane in McMinnville, Oregon, and I appreciate the opportunity. I'll be brief. I see there are many, many people here, and I know this is a very hotly debated issue. I'm actually opposed to this proposition, not necessarily because I want to go into Second Amendment rights or lack thereof, but because I think when we pass local resolutions or like this, we are essentially saying we don't really think we should have to follow the law. We have a process, and you know what I think about process. I'm a big on process. Well, we have legislatures, we elect people, they pass laws, those laws can be challenged in courts, and it is and when a law is defined, then I think it's our obligation to follow that until the law is changed. And right now, there are national laws that govern, and state laws, but a lot of national laws. And if we bypass that, I think it shows a certain lack of disrespect for our entire system. And I'll just finish up real quickly. This is like many items that divide us these days. We don't really seem to have a forum to discuss these things between ourselves. And I don't know if it's possible for the county to have some kind of a program where we can have public forums on some of these issues where people can come together and really listen to each other's viewpoints and discuss with each other, as opposed to, this is important to come here, but this is a I think, yes, no. I'd like to see a forum for some of these debates. I think that would be really helpful for the citizenry of Yamhill County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comments, Margaret.
And I'm leaving.
We won't call on you anymore. Actually, we might.
Okay, I'm going to ask us again, two of you, since there's two chairs, to come up together. Hopefully, you'll have the same feelings on the issue, so we don't see any argument and fighting at the table. But Keith Urban and Steve Wick. Keith Urban and Steve Wick.
Oh yeah, there's a chair.
Yeah, and if somebody in the hall wants to sit in a chair, we do have a chair that's opened up here since Mrs. Cross left us, so.
Well, she didn't leave us. I mean, she
Well,
just
I mean, she did.
left the building.
She didn't
Well,
buy the
kind of
farm
left the
either,
building, by the
or
farm. Or
any-
leave the
Okay,
building.
whichever one of you wants to. Keith, why don't you go first? State your name and address for the digital record, please.
Thank you. My name is Keith Urban. I live at 12035 Southeast Hoodview Road in Amity. And I want to thank the board for the Pledge of Allegiance. I haven't been to a board meeting for quite a while, and it's good to see that. I was so very proud of a previous board, somewhere around the turn of the century, when it passed a proclamation that recognized that December 15th was National Bill of Rights Day. A lot of people don't know about that. I would like to be proud of this board. I would be so very proud if you stood up for the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment. Our legislature is treading where it should not go. Portland is running our state in so many ways. Please stand up for the Bill of Rights in Yamhill County. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Keith.
thank you. Steve?
Steve?
Yamhill County farmer, and I'd like to address the Second Amendment rights as it affects me. As a farmer, my ability to use my Second Amendment rights is critical. I have to have guns, and I use them. Let me just talk about them really quick. Right now, in my filbert orchard, I have a problem with ground squirrels. They're not the little fluffy squirrels in trees and stuff like that. These critters cause a big problem. And the typical, if I trap them, I trap skunks. And once you trap a skunk, you don't want to kill them. They're really good animals, but getting them out of the trap is really bad. If I put poison out, and I've done that, I run the risk of poisoning the neighbor's dogs. So the thing I use, or I have help with, is I have my neighbors come up, and they bring up their 22 semi-automatic rifles, and they help me keep those darn squirrels under control. The other thing I do is I keep a shot. The other thing is that on our farm, we have a real problem with coyotes. We live less than 2 miles from the city of Gaston. We're still in Yamhill County. To counter that problem, again, the neighbor's kid and his friend from town, they come up and they'll hunt the coyotes. I have another friend that'll hunt the coyotes. And without that, I'd have a real big problem. In fact, the problem is so bad one of the coyotes ate my wife's poodle in our backyard.
Oh.
So we have a semi-automatic. If somebody passes a law that I can't have semi-automatics, or they pass a law that they have to be locked up, this is going to infringe on my rights. I don't want my rights infringed on. I want to be able to protect my family. I want to be able to protect my farm. So I'm going to speak selfishly here, but I'm going to tell you why I use weapons. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rick. Okay, Roy White and Lisa Owen.
I'll just go first since I'm right here.
That's right.
Okay, I'll be briefly here. I'm sure I'm in the minority. The Second Amendment is an anachronism. It was a way to provide for the defense of the newly independent United States and has been obsolete since we began maintaining a permanent national army. Setting that aside, the U.S. has a well-established history of and Supreme Court precedent for gun control measures. The current trend of firearm fetishization, not things you use firearms for general purposes, I'm talking about firearm fetishization, is a danger to public health and safety.
Thank you, Elise.
Thank you, Lisa.
Roy?
Good morning. My name is Roy White, and I live at 610 Harvard Court in Newburgh. Last time that I was in this courthouse was in 2015, and that was to speak in support of the Yamhill County Resolution 011415, which opposed the expansion of the Oregon background check system. Well, it has become obvious that the anti-Second Amendment crowd in Salem was not satisfied with that infringement on our rights under the U.S. Constitution and Oregon Constitution. Now they want to completely destroy our rights under both constitutions. These, mind you, are the same politicians that took the oath to uphold our constitutions, both at the federal and state level. If they get their way, just the possession of a 15-round magazine will get this old buzzard a year in prison. While the rapists, thieves, child molesters, and drug dealers all run free in Oregon's open sewer, also known as Portland, and that is where most of these anti-constitutionalists come from. What a coincidence. With that said, I'm speaking in support of the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance for Yamhill County, and I'm saddened to see our democratic state of Oregon reduced to the size of our county. I would like to close by saying I support our county commissioners. God bless you, and thank you for supporting our Second Amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like, and I hope I don't butcher this too bad, Nick Matari or Nick Matar. Nick Matari lives on Oak Street, Newburgh, or Oak Point, Newburgh. Come on up, Nick. And then Jim Goings. So Jim, come on up.
And also, I just want to add for those that are making public comment to make sure that you're speaking to the microphone so then they can hear you in the back as well. So.
All right. Good morning, Chair Olson, commissioners, and staff. My name is Nick Moraes. I live on 2201 Oak Drive in Newburgh. Been a resident of Yamhill County for about 10 years now, a little over 10 years. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to discuss this ordinance that I sent to you last week. That ordinance being the 2019 Yamhill County Second Amendment Sanctuary Ordinance. Given the amount of the anti-freedom legislation, our state legislature is hearing this term, our constitutional rights are in danger of being taken away by a stroke of the pen. There are numerous anti-Second Amendment bills that trample on our liberties and threaten to make good law-abiding citizens felons simply by exercising their freedom to protect themselves, their families, and those around them in public setting should the need arise. Second Amendment supporters are not the problem here. and limiting their ability to exercise their rights in a time of need is not only senseless, it is reckless. These people have purchased firearms by legal means. They pass background checks on every purchase. They take time away from their families to become very proficient at their personal safety, and they adhere to current laws regarding firearms. This group of people are law-abiding citizens who look to their leaders to ensure their freedoms are not trampled on. Because government doesn't exist to protect the greater good. Government exists to ensure we live as free people according to our Constitution. This is not about guns, as some people would have you believe. This ordinance is to preserve our rights as citizens of the United States of America and the great state of Oregon, as defined by our Constitution. Current pending legislation has been proven to fail in every setting it is adopted because these laws only produce criminals. They are ineffective because criminals are exactly that. They're criminals with no regard for the law. And I am here today asking you to stand up and protect our rights. As leaders of our county, I urge you to support the 2019 Yamhill County Second Amendment Sanctuary Ordinance and show all of us here in Yamhill County you value our freedom and our safety. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, Jim, go ahead.
I'd like to add junk onto that. My name's James Goings. I live at 2126 Northwest Elm Street, McMinnville, Oregon. I was born and raised here. My mom came here in 1958. I'd like to talk about the new gun laws coming up that are not to protect our Second Amendment. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North stated on February 28, 2019, the Second Amendment is the purest metaphor of freedom, because if you're not free to defend yourself and your loved ones, then you're not really free at all. The Second Amendment is unique. There is no other country that has anything like it. But if this disarmament movement succeeds in taking over our government, every one of those God-given individual rights and liberties, the freedoms guaranteed by our Constitution, will be up for grabs. And that means the America we know will no longer be. It will cease to exist. There is no organization. There is one organization standing in the way, and that is the National Rifle Association of America. There is 5 million members. The reason why I wanted to say what I said about Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North was because I wanted to show that we have people fighting in the federal level. I believe you three are fighting for us at the state level. There's 27 words in the Second Amendment, and the last 4 words sum it up: shall not be infringed. There are 6 counties that control Oregon. It's Lynn, Benton, and Lane. These 2 are to the south. We have Washington, Clackamas, and north, and they are to the north. They run the state of Oregon. This is what I see. And the other 30 counties are red, and we don't have a say-so with what goes in our political arena. We need you to be our mouthpiece. We need the people. We believe that you're going to stand for our Constitution, and I believe that you're going to stand for our Bill of Rights. Please defend our liberties. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Okay, Joyce Morrow and Dominic Giampetro.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson and Commissioners. I'm Joyce Morrow, and I was born here in McMinnville, and I am also representing my sister-in-law that lives in Willamina. My address is 13807 Northwest Willis Road, McMinnville, Oregon. And I not only have lived here and worked, but I have also volunteered and served this community and continue to serve this community in many volunteer capacities. And as I live out in the country, and my sister-in-law and I both want to express from a woman's point of view that we need to be able to protect our land. We both are widows, and we have people that infringe upon our property. I've had my locked gates cut, my fences cut, and people want to come on my land and ride horses, use their four-wheelers, disregard my personal rights of my property. Also, I need to have the right to protect, because we have a lot of animals. I have, in our area, out on Willis Road, we currently have a large black bear. I have pictures, and neighbors have pictures, about an 8-foot black bear that has come within 10 foot of my front door. I've called the Oregon Wildlife, and they will not do anything. And I've had cougars kill deer right on my back patio. So I need to be able to continue to protect my property. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joyce.
Good morning, Sheriff and the Commissioners. My name is Dominic Giampetro. I'm a Sergeant First Class, United States Army, retired. I live on 21730 Southwest Bennett Road, McMinnville, Oregon. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to us about this measure and for us to speak to you. I would also like to show my appreciation for all the fellow citizens that are also here to support the cause of individual liberty. It's a sublime cause that I've dedicated my entire life to, 24 years in the Army. And I'm asking today that you do the same. I have 4 points to make, and hopefully I'll get it done in the 4 minutes that I've tried to get it down to. Oregon's Constitution, having been ratified on 9 November 1857, was essentially a contract with the United States government, where the delegates came together on behalf of the citizens to enter into the United States Union, thereby promising to support and defend the U.S. Constitution and the citizens protected by it. A number of bills currently moving through the 2019 Oregon legislature are failing to honor that 1857 contract with the U.S. government. They are infringements on our civil liberties. My second point is there's a popular sophistry floating around the halls and offices of the Oregon Capitol, our benches, our courthouses, and think tanks, suggesting that if a certain firearm that didn't exist in 1857, then it wouldn't fall under the constitutional umbrella of the Second Amendment. What the opponents of individual liberty are omitting from their argument is this: the categorical imperative that creates our Constitution. There are many liberties that also did not exist in 1857. Allow me to illustrate. Women and minority votes were not allowed in Oregon in 1857. Minorities from China, African Americans weren't allowed to buy property here. So imagine for a moment that a group of people, a supermajority, with emergency clause powers, didn't like women's rights to vote because they didn't exist in 1857. And they pushed through a measure to the legislature that the governor could sign, abolishing women's rights to vote because they didn't like them, because they didn't exist in 1857. That's exactly what's happening in many cases in the judgments with the infamous assault rifle, high-capacity magazines, semi-automatic weapons. Would we, as American citizens and Oregon citizens, stand by and let a legislature take away women's rights to vote or minorities' rights to own property in Oregon? Absolutely not. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution guarantees all our liberties. If one falls, they all fall. So if you're going to let something be picked away, then they all can be picked away. So I'm asking you to also consider the 14th Amendment. My third point, I'd like to invite your attention to Title 18, Section 241 of the United States Code. It states, and I quote, "If two or more persons conspire to oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or because of his having so exercised the same, or if two or more persons go in disguise on the highway, or on the premises of another with the intent to prevent or hinder his free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege so secured, they shall be fined or tied or imprisoned or both under this section. This section in the legislature, if signed into law, would amount to registration of weapons, collection of weapons for those who don't adhere to the law, incarceration, and fines. They're violating the statute by merely talking about it. You can't conspire to take away someone's civil rights. It's illegal. My fourth point, every living creature on this planet has been given the will to survive. It's not by man that these desires to survive come from. It's not by the Second Amendment. Whoever created this planet gave us this will to survive. These are instincts and desires. Thorns, scales, teeth, hides, pigmentation, ideas, habits, dominant cycles, wisdom. Not one living creature in the natural world depends on another creature to decide what's best for it. Each relies on its own instincts. To loosely quote the great economist and philosopher Thomas Sowell, speaking about the intellectuals who would take away our rights. The intellectual should not decide for us all unless he or she is smarter than all of us combined. So not only do the bills moving through our Oregon legislature conflict with the natural world, they conflict with the Oregon and United States Constitution. The last point, these infringements also stand to take away valuable crime-fighting resources away from real criminals by creating new criminals. We don't have enough deputies as it is. So lastly, I would like to reiterate that I've dedicated my entire life to individual liberty, whether I agree with people or not. Four countries, Germany, Korea, and I'm asking you to do the same, regardless of our political party. Support the Constitution and defend us if and when the time comes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Ian Horton and Victoria Bagbaugh? Grabaugh, Victoria Grabaugh. That's a G, huh?
Well, I don't know how you follow somebody like that, but I'll try. Thank you for hearing me. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Victoria Brabaugh. I live at My name is Victoria Brabaugh. I live at 19740 Southeast Webfoot Road in Dayton. I apologize if I'm a little nervous. I've never done this before.
You're doing great so far.
I've lived in Yamhill County for 38 years. I would like to advocate for declaring Yamhill County a sanctuary county. I am a full-time employed individual who took time off from work to be here today, as I believe this is important for all of us. I have many licenses here in Oregon and Yamhill County: certified veterinary technician, driver's license, motorcycle endorsement, OLCC, and CHL, as in other states as well. Therefore, I am a law-abiding citizen who knows what laws are in place to keep everybody safe, including animals. Law-abiding citizens should be able to keep their rights and not have to worry about becoming criminals every time a new gun law is brought to the table. If Portland can be a sanctuary city for criminals here in the United States illegally, why can't Yamhill County be a sanctuary city for legal law-abiding citizens who live by our constitutional rights? Our founding fathers wrote the Constitution for a pure and just cause: freedom. It is not free, and we should be all grateful for what we have here in the United States. Once the Second Amendment falls, all goes with it are soon to follow. An unconstitutional law is an illegal law and should not be followed or enforced. The Second Amendment is very clear on this issue. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is a beautiful area we live in today. My father served in the Army, as my father-in-law served as well. I am grateful to all who have fought for our rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Victoria. I still get nervous too, Victoria. I still get nervous too. It's just so you know.
My name is Ian Houston. Thank you for having us here, Commissioners, Sheriff, and staff. I reside at 1025 Northeast Irvine Street. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran and a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation. Defending oppressed people from tyrants is in my blood. Been doing it since I was a child. My family has been building and running businesses in Oregon since 1848, when they braved the Oregon Trail in a wagon train. Oregon is a very special place to me, as it was to my fathers and grandfathers. Today, I am honored to be here as a representative of my community and of my boss, who is paying me to be here. Thank you very much. TJ Gun Sales, located here in McMinnville. Today isn't about the Second Amendment. The issue today is fear, and fear of violence. Violence is a scary thing because it involves one person intentionally hurting another person. Every person is beautiful, no matter who they are. They each have their own struggles and fears and joys and unique stories. And to think about one person hurting another person is scary. From the ancient Greeks to the city-states of medieval Italy and to the current modern countries, the right to defend one's life has always been agreed upon by all philosophers and wise men. It is not only our right as humans to defend ourselves, but it is our heritage as Americans to defend the weak and the needy. It is incumbent upon us to provide this security for ourselves. Just as we have a right to life, we have a right to defend it. The proposal to make Yamhill County a sanctuary for Second Amendment rights changes no laws in essence, but it makes a statement that if we have a moral obligation to follow just laws, then we have a moral obligation to not follow unjust laws. It is our moral obligation to tell the state of Oregon and the federal government that we will not comply, that our heritage is to protect the weak and seek freedom for all people, that no matter what unjust laws they pass, we will peacefully and politely decline to participate. As a business owner in this county and an employee of the largest gun store for miles, I can attest to you that here today that this county supports the Second Amendment. I sell guns to winemakers, plumbers, politicians, school teachers, business owners, hippies, and rednecks, and everybody in between. I even sold a pistol and a nice little safe that hides in his wall to the principal of a local school who keeps it there, who's also now seeking training from me. That's awesome. Yamhill County is firmly against the encroachment in our Second Amendment rights. The proposal to make Yamhill County a sanctuary for the Second Amendment must pass. It's not only what the people here want, it's what the people here should want for all people everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
Okay, John Engelbrecht and Daniel Gilbert.
Good morning. I'm Dana Gilbert. I live at 1139 Northwest Vista Court here in McMinnville. Thank you for inviting us to speak today. Last year in 2018, sorry, it's hard. A 17-year-old girl lived with our family. And soon after she moved in, I learned that she had been in a relationship with a 20-year-old male for several years. She had tried leaving, but she was terrified for her own life and his own. And living with weapons, including many guns, he twice pulled a gun on her and threatened to kill her and himself if she left him. The second time he tried to kill her with a gun was while she lived with us. She was able to call the police and file a report. We filed for a restraining order, and we were one of the first in the county here to use the new extreme risk protection law, taking away his guns for a year. We were also one of the first in the county to have the ruling challenged, and it was upheld in court. Now, I know a piece of paper can't keep someone 100% safe, and I know there are flaws in the new state law. For example, the guns were surrendered by the respondent. There was no way to search as is done in other states. And yes, he could have obtained guns illegally. But in this case, the decision led him to finally stay away from her. It led to his family getting him help. It allowed her voice to finally be heard. And she is alive, as is he. There is a time and a place for guns, but I'm so thankful for the protection that this law provided in an emergency situation. So there is also a time to take away guns. They don't need sanctuary, they need regulation. And I oppose a Second Amendment sanctuary in Yamhill County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, John,
Are you ready?
we're ready. Anytime.
I'm John Engelbrecht. I live at 1266 Northwest Augusta Drive here in Big Mac. Now, the Oregon Constitution is very explicit. You have a right to own a gun for your self-defense and of the state. To that effect, I've owned a gun since way before the Korean War, and I have always gone to a gun club or something like that because I do a lot of precision shooting. I go through, say, 100 rounds once a week. Yet I read bills in Salem that says, gee whiz, you can't own or buy more than 20 rounds a month? I have scratched my head. That'd be 5 shells I could shoot on a weekend. They have clips that want to limit the amount of ammunition to 5. My gun, my pistol, is semi-automatic, carries 7. The little rifle I have has 25, but modifying that thing, it'd be something else. But every time I turn around in Salem, and I've read these bills, somebody's grandstanding with a new bill to outlaw semi-automatic weapons, outlaw clips, outlaw guns, outlaw shotguns, outlaw the way you store it. And incidentally, if somebody breaks into my house, steals a gun that's not locked up, I'm the culprit. That doesn't make sense. And my response to the state person that sponsored that bill was, you stay out of my house and I'll stay out of yours. Now, there is a militia in Oregon where, by law, kids 18 to 45 are part of the state militia, organized or unorganized, and all these laws. But I think that if you do not protect the Oregon Constitution, the right to own that gun, the right to own that semi-automatic, I think you'd be doing a great disservice to yourself, and you'd find yourself being ruled and not governed. All right, I think I've done about enough here.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Jim, Michelle, or Michael, and Daniel Kalick.
Somebody else coming?
Go ahead.
You may not.
My name is Jim Michel. I am a resident of Sheridan, 619 South Bridge Street. 13 years military, retired police officer, firearms instructor, safety instructor, range master, and I've spent a lot of time volunteering firearms instruction at the police academy. I'm now fully retired for health reasons, but I want you to look around and see these people sitting here. It's sounding like a majority of them have this fetish and are a danger to the public health and safety, as has previously been testified. Article 1, Section 27 of the Oregon Constitution is even more specific than the Second Amendment of the United States. It specifically says, a citizen shall have the right to bear arms for their own defense. Shortened a little bit, but that's it. Then it goes to say the military shall be subjected to the people of the of Oregon. We've been told that the Second Amendment is antiquated, outdated. The Founding Fathers could not have anticipated semi-automatic rifles. And yet, I'm sure when the First Amendment was written, they didn't anticipate TV, radio. They didn't anticipate mass media production. And yet, it's here. It's not regulated, and it's just considered an extension of what the Founding Fathers did. In addition to that, we have other Bill of Rights that come into play. Unlawful taking of property by government entities. We have the right to be safe and secure in our own homes. I think just about everything else I had planned to say has been said, so I'll end with this. If they pass these laws that are currently in Oregon, one in particular that I've read, you can be willing to give up your muzzleloader. And those are what the Founding Fathers were talking about. Because one of those laws that they're trying to pass specifically states any firearm with a shroud, shield, or other method of fitting between the hand and the barrel to prevent you from being burned. I've got a lot of muzzleloaders at home. I don't know one of them that don't have a wooden stock up there to keep my hand from getting burned when I shoot it. So in conclusion, when I die, I hope to God that my wife does not surrender my collection to the government, and I hope to God she doesn't sell them for what I told her I paid them for.
Thanks, James.
Okay, we'll go again, Daniel Kalick and George Orr. Daniel Kalick. Put that one over here then. So let's go with Douglas Berry. So George, why don't you go ahead and start?
First of all, thank you to all of you, commissioners and staff, for giving us the opportunity to speak to you directly. Much of what I have to say has already been said in one fashion or another, so I will pass over those remarks.
Can you state your? I didn't get your last name.
I'm
That's
sorry.
all. I'm sorry.
Orr, O-R-R.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I live at 1165 Southwest Courtney Lane Drive here in McMinnville. I moved here 4 years ago with my family. One of the reasons I moved here was because I saw this as a state that supported the Second Amendment. Because you have a shall issue policy here in terms of having firearms available to us. I left the state when I no longer had that right. It was a very specific consideration of mine before I decided where we would move. That's now under attack even here, which I find somewhat disconcerting to say the least. We have already touched upon the constitutionality of the issue. All elected officers have an oath that they take to protect the Constitution and uphold our laws. If you look at the levels that we rely on to protect our rights, you can start with the federal level. What we've got as a result of counting on the federal government is uncontrolled borders. Millions of people illegally have entered our country.
Microphone, please.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know.
Amongst the millions of people, there is bound to be a certain portion of them that are going to be criminal in nature. So what are the results to us for allowing our federal level to protect us? We have an increased number of criminals, an increase in murder, drugs, rape, robbery. So we say, well, that's not going to work for us. So we turn to our state officials. And what have we gotten at that level? Sanctuary cities, failure to cooperate with federal law enforcement, lax enforcement of laws as respects gun use by criminals. What are the results to us for this? An increase in murder, drugs, rape, robbery. We've been told we should be able to rely on the police. After all, that's their job, is it not? Well, unfortunately, this isn't correct either. The U.S. Supreme Court had already established, I believe in 1989, that the police have no duty to protect citizens. So we can't really rely on that, can we? And obviously, some officers, to their everlasting shame, must have also known this. In the Parkland High School shooting, 4 officers hid behind their cars while the murderer, I call him murder, not shooter. I'm a shooter. I have guns and I target practice, but I'm not a murderer. The murderer shot 19 students over a 20-minute period while reloading 5 times. So we have passed a law that says you can only have 5 rounds. That's still 25 rounds, and this guy had 20 minutes to reload. He could still kill 19 people. That's no protection. The Portland mayor says to the police to stand down amidst violent Antifa protests, allowing property damage, citizens physically threatened. We know that the police and sheriff's offices are notoriously shorthanded and underfunded. It's not their responsibility, is it? So, now we are at the stage where we must turn to you, the people that we will encounter in our daily lives, people whose faces we will come to know or already know, who took the same oath of office that all those above you to protect our basic rights by making a resolution to support what is already enshrined in our Constitution. The question is, will you keep your oath? Thank you very much.
Thank you, George.
Hi, my name is Doug Berry. I live at 155 Northeast Pacific Avenue here in McMinnville. Thank you, Chair Olson and the members of the County Commission for considering this ordinance.
Can you speak
Yeah. Thank you for considering the ordinance. There's been a bunch said about the Second Amendment being obsolete and all these things they could have never imagined. Well, I'll tell you something they did imagine, and that was the despots we now see in Salem trying to run the whole state. That's what the Second Amendment was for, to control government, not the people. It wasn't for duck hunting. It was to control government. Sanctuary status was started in this state for illegal aliens. Somehow, per Kate Brown, that's okay. But it's not okay to protect lawful citizens, law-abiding citizens who pay taxes, haven't broken any crimes in their lives, when their freedoms are being taken away from them. I find that just disgusting. Now, my wife is from South America, and we go down once, twice a year to visit her family in Ecuador, and we get to see the Venezuelan people who are fleeing from this kind of malarkey. They wish they still had their guns, all of them. And fetishism? You have no further to look than the failed religion of Barack Hussein Obama for fetishism in the United States. The new gun laws are based on the failure of government in Parkland, Florida. The teachers knew about this murdering kid. The counselors knew. The mental health professionals knew. The sheriff's office had 45 calls on this guy. The FBI was given the correct spelling of his name, and they pointed to social media where he was bragging about becoming the next school shooter of 2018. But nobody did anything. Even on the day of the shooting, the sheriff's office stood down. 3 teachers died in that assault. Coaches that shield the children from the bullets with their bodies because they were disarmed from people like the Democrats in Salem. We know how to take care of school shootings. You've been told time and time again how to do it, and yet they want to double down with more gun laws. We're told, I've been active in this issue since the 1980s when I was a paralegal and legal investigator in Portland. No one wants to take your guns, but here we are. They say, oh, you need to be proficient, yet they want to limit you to 20 rounds of ammunition a month. I used to shoot 200 rounds a day when I was a competitive shooter to practice, just to be competitive. 20 rounds a month. To say that I agree with this sanctuary status for the Second Amendment is putting it mildly. I have no patience for what's going on in Salem. In fact, our 2-year plan is to move out of this state. We're sick and tired of it, all of it. I put in 9 years with the county housing, the Housing Authority of Yamhill County. I know Joyce from her volunteer work there. I know Commissioner Sterrett because she was the liaison with the Housing Authority. And they do great work. But there's no accountability. The answer seems to be throw more money on an open flame and hope for the best. Well, this isn't it. And I applaud you for trying to protect our liberties from the leftists in Portland and Salem and Eugene. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Okay, Steve Summerfield and Sue Delventhal.
We match.
That's why he did it, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was just, the cards were played right.
Mine's very short. My name's Steve Summerfeld. I live at 21020 Southwest Christensen Road in Sheridan. And I'm a 69-year-old and a resident of Yamhill County, obviously. I've owned firearms all my adult life. I have never abused this privilege and right that is guaranteed by the Second Amendment of the Constitution. I find it abhorrent that I may be criminalized for owning a particular type of weapon or a magazine that holds more than 5 rounds of ammunition. I urge you to enact a Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance in Yamhill County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Delventhal, 21300 Southwest Bald Peak, Hillsborough. It is in Yamhill County. Thank you, Chair and County Commissioners Sterrett and Kula, for allowing me to talk on this important subject. I'm going to approach this from a more practical standpoint. As a citizen, I like to be informed about issues that are within our county. And I was somewhat surprised that there wasn't an actual final wording of this ordinance. So I don't feel I have all the information as a citizen to go ahead and make a, valid argument in my mind, because I think there is lacking information. Now, maybe it is out there in the public, but I haven't been able to find it, and I have looked for it. So I think that's a really serious flaw, that there isn't a prepared document of this ordinance that all citizens, no matter where you stand on the Second Amendment situation, can look at. So talking more about the financial standpoint of this, I believe it is too late to get this on our May election if this has to go to a vote for the public. So I'm thinking this issue, if all citizens are to be able to weigh in on it, which I think is critical for the functioning of a good government in the county, I feel that this would be a special election. And I'm thinking, is that a wise move for our county to go ahead and consider it a special election, put forth the funds for that, because special elections are costly? That's concerning, because I think, wow, we have a lot of projects and plans for this great county that seem very, very important to fund and fund adequately. So we would have to consider where that funding is coming from, and that, to me, is concerning. The other thing is the possibility of a legal challenge. If the city does go ahead and passes a Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance, then I believe that we might open ourselves, or the county may open themselves up to a legal challenge. This is concerning because it would be maybe a long, lengthy challenge. And of course, again, the cost, at what cost to go ahead and fight this. So my feelings come not so much from my personal stance on the Second Amendment, but more from a rational concern for the financial status and how we would go about moving this forward. I would like all county commissioners, all of you, to thoroughly examine the costs and the possible legal ramifications that the county would be facing if indeed this Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance is passed. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, may I make a comment about it being online?
Certainly.
The actual wording of the updated ordinance in there, the reason why it wasn't on the agenda earlier is, it's a really long story, but we didn't know what we were actually going to be voting on today. We found out that the ordinance that was brought to us by the constituent was in fact not the updated, corrected ordinance. County Council spoke with the author of this, an attorney who wrote this, who let him know that he had made some revisions to it. So if you look in today's meeting packet online, you will read the wording for the ordinance that we will be discussing today.
Thank you, but then again, today's the meeting, and this just got online. It's really not fair to the public. So that's just my point.
Right, we were still updating as of yesterday and wondering how we were going to proceed with that. But we do hear your point. It was a very complicated last minute.
Yeah, I don't think last minute things are good for this county.
No, they're not. They're not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Joe Eubanks and Jim Ludwig. Jim, where are you? You're back there. Come on forward. I heard your remarks early on, so about standing up. So I'll remember those remarks.
Just don't tell your family.
I won't. Believe me, I won't.
Hello, my name's Joe Eubanks, and I live in Newburgh. I'm going to withhold my address for now, but I'll let you know why. I'd like to start by thanking the county commissioners and the council and all of the staff and the good citizens of Yamhill County who've come in here to be a part of this government process today. My 12-year-old son's able to be here and kind of see government in action, and so I'm also happy to have that occurring today. As a lifelong resident of Yamhill County, I have a vested interest in the area.
Could you speak closer to the mic?
You bet. As a lifelong resident of Yamhill County, I have a vested interest in the area, as many on both sides of this issue do. I work daily as a law enforcement officer in Yamhill County. I'm a firearms instructor, and as a detective, I'm many times being the voice for victims who can't defend themselves. It's my responsibility to investigate horrible crimes and to help bring justice to those who would prey on the weak and the vulnerable. I'm asking all of you to be our voice and protect our right to defend ourselves with the tool of our choosing. In recent years, there's been numerous news stories where armed citizens have helped save the lives of law enforcement officers and other citizens who are being attacked by criminals with weapons of many types. I think by supporting further legislation that restricts the ammunition capacity of a magazine or that restricts the lawful ownership of a semi-automatic firearm, which are both able to be purchased today within this state lawfully with background checks and otherwise, it creates a new class of criminals that law enforcement isn't prepared to deal with. There's not the funding to deal with. And again, these are people who are law-abiding citizens that pay taxes, they go to work, they're good people. I have no doubts that the people in this room behind me, if I was on a traffic stop on a roadway and somebody was on top of me, pummeling me, or attempting to get my firearm, that these people would stop and defend me. I know that the people who go out and seek out firearms training, that want to have those things to protect themselves, they have that innate want to protect others and to help people. When I run a license plate of a vehicle and I hear that the person's a concealed carry permit holder, I personally, as an officer, feel a little bit better knowing that person's been through a bit of a background check. I understand that they want to take on that personal responsibility. Mr. Giampetro, I think I've got his name right, he spoke earlier and he talked about how animals are equipped with scales and claws and teeth and those things to defend themselves. I've met people in this life that I've worked with in law enforcement or in person who don't have that ability. They don't want to defend themselves. They abhor the idea of taking another life to defend theirs. I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't want to kill anybody. I never have wanted to. But I also know that with my tools and my training, if I have to save another life, I am prepared to take a life. And that's a horrible thing. I know officers who have been in that situation that can't perform their duties anymore because of the stress of the fact that they had to take a life. I know officers who've been under investigation, and through other friends, officers who have taken their own lives because of the stress of having to have shot somebody in the line of duty. One of the things that concerns me the most about this drafted legislation and some of these different Senate and House bills within the state of Oregon is one that restricts concealed handgun license holders from schools and airports, and if they violate this, they are risking 5 years in prison for that violation. We talked a little bit about Parkland, Florida today and the school shooter there. And I think I, along with every other law enforcement officer in this state and probably nationwide, shuddered when we saw that those officers hung up at their cars and didn't go in. I'm trained to run towards gunfire. That's what we train on with our active shooter training. And if I die in the course of trying to save a child or a teacher or anything, that's what I'm prepared to do. To punish a teacher or a school administrator and make it so they can't carry a handgun in our school, where they could be that first person to stop an active shooter, it's insane to me. Many of these laws, when you start reading them, limiting ammunition capacity to 5 rounds in a magazine. I have revolvers that shoot 7 rounds. So my semi-automatic firearm and my revolver, which both fire at the same speed, my semi-automatic firearm can't have 2 more rounds. What I'm trying to ask you people to be for and speak up for us and be our voice, even though you may see this as a motion that doesn't actually stop a law from happening, I think you're speaking for us. You're being our voice. We're asking you as your constituents to stand up for our constitutional right to own firearms. The types that are legal presently, the ammunition magazine devices that are legal presently, I truthfully don't know individual rank and file law enforcement officers who would enforce this law. And I know there are those that will say, well, that's your job. You have to. We are given some grace. There are shall arrest issues within the state of Oregon, but we have some individual officer discretion. I know officers who have found people to be in possession of drugs, who have told them, we're going to seize this, we're going to destroy it, you're not going to incur a criminal charge, because I do think you need to get into rehab. I don't think anybody here would say that's an absolutely horrible thing all the time, that we don't arrest every person who's ever been in possession of a drug. So for officers to have that discretion not to enforce this, I also would like to know who here within county government or the commissioners would want to go stand on the doorstep of a person who's never committed a crime, but we received information that they may be in possession of a 30-round magazine for their AR-15 rifle, and that they may be in possession of a semi-automatic rifle that they didn't turn in because one of these laws came to pass. And that's what we're really talking about today. These laws are designed to affect people who are not criminals. They are law-abiding people. Homicides are illegal. I've investigated those. Drugs are illegal. I've arrested people for drug crimes. Passing a law makes people feel good, but it doesn't change the human nature of free will and what people do with objects. I see firearms as tools, and I see them as tools for good. Occasionally, bad people do get a hold of those items. We need to punish those people for their individual actions and not the body or the group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Good morning. My name is Jim Ludwig. I live at 7500 Southwest Liebold Road, obviously in McMinnville, and I'm here in support of making Yamhill County a sanctuary county for gun owners. First thing I want to acknowledge is the American flag. It's here. I was in the Capitol last week testifying on a bill, and in the hearing room, there was no American flag. When I went to the administrator and asked him how come, they all looked at each other. Didn't even realize that they hadn't put up the flag. They're not doing that anymore. Salem is almost like a different country to us. My father was a machinist mate in World War II, and towards the end of the war, he was on a ship that was sailing from the Indian Sea to the South China Sea in anticipation of the invasion of Japan. Well, fortunately, we dropped the bomb, and he didn't have to be part of that. Because of his experience in the Navy, he became a machinist manufacturing firearms for the gun maker.
We could give you a list, but.
Yeah.
College.
And so I had a chance to have all kinds of firearms, which I still do. Unlimited amount of ammunition. I lived in a suburb of Los Angeles. In my whole life, I've never shot out anybody's light, shot an animal that wasn't in season, endangered anybody. That was passed on to me from my father. I have those weapons still, and I want to be able to pass them on. None of them would qualify under the law proposed in Salem. The hearing I was at in Salem was on House Bill 2932, a bill that would deny a judge in Oregon from asking someone their legal immigration status when they're about to set a bill. Now, wouldn't it make sense if the person was an illegal alien, the judge knew that he would set a higher bail for him? But that's the kind of bills they have in Salem that do no honor to citizenship and basically empower people who have no legal right to be here. As one of the founders of Oregonians for Immigration Reform, I've had numerous threats to my life, none that I bothered to file about. Most of them, they call me up in the middle of the night and say, "We know where you live." Since I'm in the phone book, it shouldn't surprise anybody. But we have laws in our country, and the laws that we have as citizens that protect us don't seem to be as important to people in Salem or in Washington, D.C. to a large extent. So I'll just close by saying and asking you to support this bill to make Yamhill County a sanctuary county for legal firearms. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Need a break, Casey?
How many more are there?
20.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, yeah. We'll go a little longer.
Okay, let's take about a 10 minute or 15, let's take a 15-minute break. We still have about 20 people left to testify, and then we need to go into deliberations and staff reports. So let's take about a 15-minute break, give everybody a chance to go outside, and hopefully it's not raining or do whatever we need to do. Okay, we'll have everybody has a chance. There are some more chairs in here now. If anybody in the hall wants to come in and sit, if anybody in the hall wants to come and sit down, we do have more chairs out here in here now. So I will call back to order our the meeting of the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners for March 19th, and we'll continue on with public testimony. And I have Arthur Annis and David, excuse me, SQ. You live on First Street in Carlton.
I'm Arthur.
You're Arthur, I know it. So is there a David? Okay, we'll come back to that later then in a minute. Okay, and then Les Tees, so where was he? He was sitting back here a minute ago. Yeah. No, Les. Oh, Leslie. I couldn't see the IE here. Leslie Taves. So come on up, Leslie. I was kind of pointing at you back there and your husband. I was kind of pointing at you, but.
You were first. Go ahead.
Chair Olson and commissioners, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak and address you. Much of what I was going to say has been covered. I'll just hit a few high points to reiterate. But let me start with telling you a little bit about who I am. I'm a resident of Yamhill County. We own a small farm. I am a veteran. I'm actually a disabled veteran. I have a bachelor's degree in business and I have a master's degree. I am a VP of a Fortune 500 company. I actually, thank goodness, I'm retired. So I'm a former one of those. I'm a grandfather, importantly, and now I'm working as a part-time instructor at a local university. I'm also a very proud and safe gun owner. So I tell you all that so that you understand I'm not coming from this bias or that bias or this background, but safe, responsible, legal gun owners represent all facets of life, every sort of job. And you've seen a big cross-section today of different people coming here to ask you to please do what you can to support our Second Amendment rights. A few of the points that were made, and I won't go over all of them, but I'm not sure anyone's actually mentioned Senate Bill 501. That's one of the most draconian and of the bills that will attack our rights. And they did mention the 20 round per month limit, which is absolutely ridiculous. That will make us less safe because, as was pointed out, you can't use just 20 rounds. If you're an active, practicing, staying safe gun owner, and you're using your gun on a regular basis at the range, 20 rounds is gone in a few minutes, a couple of minutes. So that's an important point to make. A few other things I just wanted to point out that I think haven't been mentioned. One is that I strongly believe that laws do not contradict or counteract effectively human nature. One of the speakers spoke about human nature, and my view is, this isn't the first time we've passed a law to try to stop people from doing something or to change their behavior. For example, we've had a war on drugs for decades and decades now. How's that worked? Okay, so what this will do, as some people have said, is these draconian laws will affect all of us who will obey the law, and they will disarm us, the law-abiding citizenry, and effectively disarming with the way these statutes go. And so you will see the rise of significant black market activity. I don't think anyone has specifically talked about that today. And I don't want to see that going on here in Yamhill County, but I'm afraid when it's done at the state level, it's going to happen across the state. So everybody who wants a gun and doesn't really care about following the law, they're going to make sure that they can get a gun. And there will be plenty of people who are willing to bring them across state lines or any other means that they choose to make sure that they can get the money for selling them illegally. So the black market's going to explode. And that's of grave concern to me because it's just more crime, more criminals, and more people that don't care about safety. So I did want to mention that. There is one other thing I do want to mention, and that is that I disagree. Well, I disagree with a couple of the speakers respectfully. The comment about fetish was, in my mind, was insulting. And in our political discourse today, it's, if you just listen for half a minute, somebody's insulting somebody, and I don't think that's a good way to have discourse. But I think you've seen here that people have been expressing today a very serious and sincere held belief, not just a fad or a fetish. The other thing, and this one's really important to me, is that there were comments made about having the specific wording available to the public, and perhaps even having a public vote on what you're considering passing today. My view is this: we had a public vote on it. That was our general election, and we elected you, and you represent us. And so I understand there are times when you may decide that you want to bring things to a referendum. I don't think this is one of those times. I think it's very clear that our Second Amendment is under attack, and we are legal citizens where you are our representatives. And so I would reiterate the voices here today who have asked you, please, please, even if it's only a statement, if there's no legal effect to it, I don't know what the legal effects would be, but please do endorse and pass the sanctuary measure for Yamhill County. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
My name is Leslie Taves. I live in McMinnville, 2014 Northeast McDaniel Lane. And I'm here today to ask you to vote no on this sanctuary law, which would empower the sheriff of Yamhill County to ignore future state of Oregon and federal laws which would alter or limit current gun laws. I believe that this is asking too much of the sheriff to interpret what he would consider constitutional or not. I feel that we have elected people to the legislature, and that people should be testifying there and talking to them. I also believe that it is just not the place of the county commission to honor this sanctuary statement or law, which we have not even had the opportunity to see. So I ask you to vote in opposition to it, and feel that it is inappropriate for the county to consider it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. Okay, Mark Goss and Sidoni Winfield. Okay, Sid, it's your, you can come forward now. You've been sitting there a lot. You can come forward now.
So, my name is Mark Goss. I live at 234 East 16th Street in Lafayette. So, a lot of people have talked, a lot of people have given a lot of statements, and I agree with a lot of the people, and I think that the conversation about criminals being criminals and law-abiding citizens being law-abiding citizens is pretty self-evident. So I didn't want to go too far into that. What I did want to just kind of express is that I'm an active competitive shooter along with my family, and I wanted to basically kind of express the impacts of some of the laws that Salem's currently looking at right now. So my son and I have been actively competitively shooting for about 15 years myself. My son's about 4 years. Sorry, 4 to 5 years he's been practicing, and he's been competing about 3. It's been a really good thing for us as well as the rest of my family, because we have the opportunity to go and meet other people that we typically wouldn't meet. They range anywhere from the ages of 12 up into their 70s and 80s, which is great because it gives my children and myself the opportunity to talk with people we normally wouldn't talk to. It also gives us the ability to meet people that have different beliefs. So this competitive shooting's allowed us to compete. We've competed in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, Arizona, Ohio, and Florida. So we go all over the world, or not the world, but the nation, to do this. And we've shot in state matches, local matches, area matches, as well as I've shot at 5 national matches, and my son's now shot at 2 national level matches. Senate Bill 501 talks about limiting us to 20 rounds of ammo. Right now, we are shooting about 12,000 rounds a year, so we're slightly above that, I believe.
I can do that math.
Yeah, so obviously it doesn't work for me as well as a lot of the people here. It gives us the ability to travel and meet people. You know, we've been on the stage with world-class shooters, and it's a wonderful group of people. And by and large, when we're out there, you know, people aren't getting hurt. People are having fun. We talk. We tape targets. It's a great time. The Senate bills that are being proposed would eliminate that from a lot of people. Our local matches typically have between 70 and 100 shooters at them every month, except for December because it's around Christmas. But other than that, it's every month. And some of the stages we've been on, there's 400, 500, 600 shooters that are there competing. And it's a lot of people to meet, and a lot of, it's really fun, and it's a neat opportunity that we've had. I worry about the fact that if these measures get passed and we don't have a sanctuary status in this county, that a lot of the gun owners here face either having to look for sanctuary in other locations so that they can continue to own and use firearms, or they're going to become criminals. And it's just not right, in my opinion, for law-abiding citizens who take the time to follow the laws, get guns, purchase them through legal means, practice, and follow the laws, to suddenly become a criminal because they happen to have a gun that looks a particular way, holds too many rounds. It just doesn't make sense, and it's not right. I'd like to thank the board for having the courage to have this discussion, because I know it's not necessarily a popular thing in our state with a lot of the state legislators to even have a discussion about the Second Amendment, because it's always easy to blame an object rather than the fact that the criminal that's doing the action is actually a criminal, and it doesn't matter what laws are in place, they're still going to behave like a criminal. And I urge you to vote in support of a Second Amendment sanctuary status for the county.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Commissioners, thank you. Staff, thank you. And all the vets, I do appreciate your service, as my relatives were also vets, and I appreciate that. And also thank you, Sheriff Stevenson. It's hard, especially since my husband's in Yakima, and you've had a fellow brother who passed away up there in an active shooting. So thank you for your service. I am frustrated to be here. Commissioner Sterrett, you spoke the other day at Linfield about the lack of civility in our politics. And it's frustrating to be in front of you all with the lack of notice that I received. At 11:30 today, I was able to pull up the ordinance that is now in front of you, or in front of all of us. It's now, what, 12 o'clock? 30 minutes is not enough time for me to peruse and provide adequate commentary on an ordinance that bucks our state laws. And I find, and I don't know what we're doing with this ordinance. I mean, it says it's an ordinance. Your agenda item said something else. I don't know if it's going to the voters. I don't know what we're trying to do with this. So it's very frustrating as a citizen to not really understand why I'm here, except that I don't agree with this county becoming a sanctuary county. And when we don't have enough notice and enough understanding of what's in front of us, then incivility occurs. Also, we all saluted the flag this morning, and the last line of our oath that we said today, and justice for all. Justice comes down to what our laws are. And when we buck those laws, anarchy occurs and incivility occurs. Increased risk happens to our civil servants and our police officers and those who actually do follow the gun laws. I am very happy to have used a double pump rifle, or I don't even know, I'm not using guns anymore, so my apologies to all of you who are active shooters and train everybody. I was very fortunate to be trained by the FBI officer in Oklahoma. Loved having that training, and I appreciate those of you who follow our laws and keep up your training so that you're using the tool of a gun appropriately. When I'm facing bears, I like to have my Magnum strapped to my back. When I'm up in Alaska, I need those tools. I did not have access to a semi-automatic rifle because at that time they were illegal. The laws that are in front of us with the state of Oregon, that is the legislature and those who represent us in this state right now, contrary to what so many of those of us who have spoken have said, they are representing us. That is the forum that this frustration that I hear should be directed to. The amount of rounds so that you can continue to train, the amount of rounds that other people need to run the tools for their farm, that is something that should be presented to the legislature. It should not be presented here for those of us to buck the rules that have been given to us, that you have upheld through your oath to this office, and that we have all upheld to the oath to the flag and to the country. The fact that this is considered a sanctuary law is frustrating also, in that it tries to pop on the immigration sanctuary status. The reason we have the immigration sanctuary status, that comes from the 10th Amendment and the concept of federalism. Trying to propose a Second Amendment sanctuary does not work, and that puts the county liable. It puts those who try not to uphold our state laws liable. Other states where they have other counties who have tried to buck their state laws have also been told that they will be personally liable if they have been found that they did not confiscate something that they were told to confiscate, and then that tool was then used to harm somebody. And I would hate to have any of us or any of you all be held personally liable for something, for upholding a sanctuary status. The frustration that I have heard today is palpable. I understand that. I mean, people need to be able to protect themselves. They need to be able to protect their farms. They need to be able to do their daily business. This is the wrong forum. This is absolutely the wrong forum. We are here to uphold our laws, and the best way to do that is to go direct your complaints and your frustrations to the legislature right now. And finally, I was also with Dana, helping her with the young lady that had the issues where she could have died. There are so many people that are not handling guns as a tool and as a trained tool. And that's where these laws need to be focused towards. And by declaring this as a sanctuary state, you're taking away those tools also. And for a variety of reasons, I think what is in front of you right now is illegal. It'll put the county at personal risk. It'll put you each individually at personal risk. It'll put the sheriffs at personal liability and risk. And it puts those who are here because they actually are law-abiding citizens with their tools at risk. This is the wrong forum. And you need to say, you know, I'm so sorry, we may agree with you or not agree with you on these issues, but this is the inappropriate place for this concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney.
Jacob Miller and Bill Dollar. And again, please state your name and your address for the digital record.
My name's Jacob. I was born and raised in McMinnville. Just not going to answer the address question. I'd just like to start and say thank you for everybody that's shown up to speak on this. This is a big issue, and I think that people should really take it seriously. I'm going to not even read most of the stuff that I wrote up because most of it's been covered, and I thank everybody that stepped up to do that. But I would like just stuff that hasn't been covered, and based off of some of the stuff that I just heard, just kind of go from that standpoint. Laws repugnant to the Constitution are void. Actually, if somebody knows that a law is unconstitutional in their official capacity, and they enforce that law in their official capacity, and they know it's unconstitutional, it's a color of law violation. That color of law violation could cost the county. I think the county is aware of the costs of being sued and their insurers, and that going up from them not protecting people the way that they're supposed to, and not following laws the way that they're supposed to, not applying laws the way they're supposed to, constitutionally. Looking at the constitutionality of this, the idea that people haven't had enough notice, there's plenty of notice. There's a state's constitution, and there's a federal constitution. We've got notice through the legislation through a barrage of bills that are designed to destroy the republic. They're a war against the Constitution. It's warring against the Constitution. If it's void, if it's repealed the Constitution, it's void. So that's what it is. It's a direct attack against the Constitution, both the state and federal. The Second Amendment and the 27th Amendment, the state of Oregon. I really think that people should count the costs of not acting now while we have a chance. Count the costs. Count the costs of what just blatantly disregarding the Constitution, the contract with the people, and doing away with it and letting legislators decide whatever they want. This is a way that we can step up and say something that will take a stand. Really, what it is taking a stand upon the Constitution instead of sitting down and letting somebody else decide. I think that that's all I got to say. I'll just close up with that and let you carry
Thank
on,
you.
friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners, for giving us the time to speak and listen to our qualms, I guess. My name is Bill Dollar. I live at 34843 Northeast Rocky Hill Road in Newburgh. I am the Yamhill County Chapter OHA President, and we have, in the state of Oregon, over 300,000 sportsmen that could become. I'm just going to touch on a few bases because we have beat these things to death here today. But making our legal citizens criminals is just not the way to go about it. And we have 6 counties of the 36 counties basically infringing upon those counties. And I say that infringing because this is a lifestyle for me. My hunting is a lifestyle, and I believe that hunting is a lifestyle for those 300,000 sportsmen, men and women in Oregon. And not once have I ever imposed or infringed on those 6 counties' lifestyles, but yet it seems that they keep infringing upon ours. And I'm talking about the 30 rural counties in the state of Oregon that are governed by 6 other counties in the state of Oregon. That something's got to be changed, and the prior speaker before me said that this wasn't the right venue. This is not the right vehicle to force this complaint. Well, time and time again, our state legislatures are ignoring our words. And if we can't be heard at the state level, then by God, we need to be heard at the county level. And I don't believe that this is the wrong forum, because it's given us a voice that we haven't had before. And so I'd like to thank you for that and having the courage to do and at least listen to us on this topic, because this is a topic that has divided us, is dividing us more, and we have to get a grip on it somehow. I don't know how that is. I honestly don't. You guys got a big job ahead of you. But with that said, also, if you take those 300,000 sportsmen and women, and the 501, House Bill 501, if that got implemented, could you tell me what would happen to the Department of the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife when you have all 300,000 of those hunters that have this lifestyle that now they can't have it? They're not going to support ODFW, because it is the sportsmen and women of Oregon that actually give back more than any other type of agency, or not agency, but active group. I mean, if you want to go to the leftist side, that's kind of where I'm trying to say that. We put our money where our mouths are, and we're just not being heard at the state level. So I do believe that this is the right forum for us. Whether it does anything, at least it sends out a message that we don't agree with how everything's going. And I'd like to thank you for that and the time to speak. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bill.
Let's go on to Mary or Merrill Kunkel and Daniel Daunt.
I'm Meryl.
Hi, Merrill.
Hi. No one else? Okay,
Yeah.
just me. All right. So my name is Meryl Kunkel. I live at 2505 Redwood Court in Newburgh, and I'd like to thank you for having us here today to give our comments. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm here to say I am not opposed to the Second Amendment, nor do I support all of the current legislation in the state, but I am surprised that we are discussing passing an ordinance for which the language was only finalized today. And I think it's rather a surprise and inappropriate to be discussing passing it. So I question the legality of these ordinances. In other counties, many sheriffs have stated that these ordinances are largely symbolic, as they still have to uphold federal and state laws. So if these are only symbolic, why pass ordinances of questionable legality? Finally, I believe that the question of constitutionality of state laws is a question for the courts, and it is not the place of the counties to be passing ordinances like this. People that we've heard from today who have very clear voices in opposition, who I fully support their opinions, should do so at the state legislature. And that's why I suggest that you vote no.
Okay. Thank you, Merrill. Okay, let's go again. Daniel Daunt. Is Daniel Daunt here? If not, I'll put him aside then. And we have Rufus Hearn and Mike Poe.
Sorry about that. Well, let's start with what everyone else said. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Can you state your name and address for the digital record, please?
Okay, I was going to hit that just after.
Okay.
My name is Rufus Hearn. I live at 32345 Southwest Savage Road, Sheridan, Oregon. And I want to extend the same thank you that everyone has to the commission here and the staff. I will try to be succinct, although I do have a couple things I want to add that I did not put in my notes, one of which has been brought up several times about laws at the county level, which has been a long established in this nation for hundreds of years to be a reality, that counties can pass ordinances that have different views as to the states with which they're housed. The easiest one to reference back to is alcohol.
You should be closer to the mic.
Sorry. The easiest one to reference is alcohol. Many counties within many states had different laws regarding alcohol that were in complete antithesis to the state laws. But that is not what I came to say. To give a basic background of myself, I'm an ex-defense contractor, propulsion systems. I've also worked in art, in the film industry for a long time in Los Angeles County. I lived in Los Angeles County weaponless, where I grew up in Las Vegas, which was an open carry state. In Los Angeles, I was a victim of violent crime 4 separate times, one of which was a home invasion robbery, in which I ended up against basically 2 crackheads with knives with a machete in my hand. It was terrifying because I had a 10-year-old child asleep in her bedroom. 2 years later, when I was back in Las Vegas, I had a home invasion robbery. I was upstairs with my now 12-year-old daughter sleeping. I chambered around, and the last thing I saw when I got downstairs was a broken door and taillights. That seemed a fairly effective measure to not deal with a face-to-face encounter. But that's not my point either. That's just smallly touching on a point. The point here is constitutionality. We are a nation that was founded on the concept of the populace keeping pace with would-be oppressive forces and self-defense, but really the measure was about would-be oppressive forces and keeping pace technologically with them. It wasn't a question of what guns were available at the time. It was a question as to what powers were available, to what forces one might encounter. When it comes to the constitutionality of these measures that are being placed at the national and the state level, I have only one answer, and I will then turn my time over to you, sir. That is West Virginia Board of Education versus Barnett, 1943. Justice Jackson wrote the opinion of the findings of that court. Measure 602, I believe it was. I forgot to put the note. The very purpose of the Bill of Rights was to withdraw a certain subject from the vicissitudes of political controversy, to place them beyond the reach of majorities and officials, and to establish them as legal principles to be applied by the courts, not the legislatures. One's right to life, liberty, property, and free speech, free press, freedom of worship and assembly, and other fundamental rights may not be submitted to vote. They depend on the outcome of no elections. This is a very telling decision that very effectively locks those first 10 amendments into existence as the Bill of Rights that was never ratified in the founding of the Constitution. And that's how our original founding fathers saw it. And to my knowledge of case precedents and the way precedent works on the hearing of future decisions and future laws written, none of these bans will ever be constitutional until such a time as we choose to throw out the entire document so that we can rewrite those first 10s that are inexorably part of that Constitution after this SCOTUS finding. I thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you vote in support of this very much.
Thank
you all for your time.
Thank you, Rufus.
Hey, my name is Mike Poe. I live at 29425 Northwest Mount Richmond Road in Gaston, Oregon. I 100% agree with the things he said. And just to start off a little bit about me, so I was born and raised in Oregon, lived here all my life, except for the years that I was off in the Air Force, where I was in Michigan and Washington for about 8 years. When I entered the Air Force, I swore an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. As a trade these days, I'm an IT guy. I do a lot of research. I'm very, very detail-oriented, but I grew up fairly unpolitical. Didn't really have any idea what political affiliation I had, if I had any at all. I figured, well, I'm probably a Democrat, I guess, because we're a democracy, right? Since then, I've actually researched some things and learned that, well, we're actually a democratic republic, and that's different, and I've started to learn that. So when it came to learning about these, what's my stance on things like firearms and Second Amendment, and I defended the Constitution while I served in the military, but do I really know what all those things mean? And being the detail-oriented guy that I am, I started doing research on that. So, something to keep in mind if you were to go back 40 years and somebody said, "Hey, my brother's sick," he's probably ill. These days it means a different thing to kids. You hear them say, "Oh, dude, that's sick." It's like, okay, well, words have meanings at the time that they were created, and our Constitution and its amendments had meanings at the time it was created. So I just wanted to, super fast, just try to give a brief history of what that means when we talked about the Second Amendment. So, in fact, I just happened to come across at a garage sale, a big volume set of big dictionaries that were really big, fat, and probably, I feel like I got them for $5, and they're from 1918 or something like that. They're pretty old, and I got them for $5. They're pretty cool finding. So when I talk about this, a well-regulated militia, starting with that, well-regulated at the time that was, and you can find it all kinds of different documentation from the contemporary of the Constitution writers and Bill of Reference writers. Regulated didn't mean that we have lots of regulations around it. It meant that it was well-ordered, it was functional. They compare it to the workings of a clock, that it works well. So what works well? A militia. What was that? At the time, it was 18 to 45-year-old males, and in some cases, they were actually required by law to have their own muskets and a certain amount of ammo, and you could actually file a petition to get some free if you couldn't afford to have that. But a militia was required for that, and it wasn't the standing army. It was for people to be available to, like he said, combat against oppressors. So moving on, being necessary to the security of the free state. That's why we're talking about this upcoming statement, because it's necessary for the security, long-term viability of a free state, people being free, and so forth. So why? There's the why. What is it? The right, not a suggestion, but a right of the people, and in every other place in the Constitution where you talk about the people, it's everybody. It's not a militia. It's not an organized militia. It's not the National Guard. It's not the federal army. It's the people. The people have the right to free speech. Everywhere it's used in the Constitution, there's no reason to single out the people in the Second Amendment as, oh, that's some different group of people. So what do they have the right to do? To keep, to own, to possess, and bear, keep with them, take with them, use arms. What kind of arms? Well, at the time, it was equivalent to what the military had. Yeah, it was muskets back then. Our armies have moved on. And if there was ever such a terrible thing to happen as our government being corrupt, and people would maybe suggest sometimes that might be the case of what's happening, and on either side of the fence, no matter who's in charge, the last number of years gotten pretty divisive. But if we ever got to where we had a corrupt government, we declare some emergency, and hey, it's no longer we're just going to rule by martial law. Well, what if that goes bad? What if we decide not to have elections anymore? What if that's the upper level government decides? That is the purpose of the Second Amendment, is to protect against that, both or other people coming from other countries and invading, but also there is a very much a belief among our founding fathers that this is to protect us so the people remain free. Not just the government, not just the police, but the people are able to defend themselves against any enemies, foreign or domestic. So the Constitution is the law of the land. Its purpose is to ensure our freedom. And really, as my research is up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is kind of the county is our last line of defense when federal or state or anybody else tries to infringe on our constitutional rights. So I would ask you to take that into consideration and protect our Second Amendment right, because it's important to every other right we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Rhonda Langley and Jim Krautstander.
I'm Rhonda Langley, and yeah, I live at 175 Southwest Braley Street here in McMinnville. I want to say thank you to the commissioners and staff for listening to us, and thank you for considering this amendment. I've lived in Yamhill County for 32 years. I have a degree from Linfield College. I taught Head Start for many years, and now I'm raising my family. My husband is a safe, responsible gun owner. He has hunted for many years, and this is for many generations, going back to his father. This provides us with a lot of healthy food for our family. I'm just here kind of nervous a little bit, but I've decided that I want to be one of the people to speak up. I'm here to support the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance. It's very clear that our Second Amendment rights are under attack. I'm here to speak out for citizens to be able to protect their Second Amendment rights. I'll just tell you a little story. This winter, three of my three children and I were out near our home in McMinnville, here in town, walking in the snow early in the morning. We discovered that there were many homeless people that we didn't know about that began camping out over the winter in a forest not very far from our home, just a few feet actually. They were sleeping out with just mere tarps in 25-degree weather. When I called the homeless mission shelter in town, there was plenty of room there for them. I've lived near the St. Barnabas Episcopal Church for over 16 years, where the soup kitchen is happening 5 days a week now. Over the last couple years, there's been quite a change in the people that are coming. Even now, every day, starting for many hours before the soup kitchen starts, many people are coming, many homeless people. I see come and go. I see them not only loitering and smoking and exchanging drugs, actually, recently, and sometimes being violent. The police have told me that they used to know personally the small group of homeless people living here in McMinnville. The McMinnville police told me that they do not know this huge group of people now that are infiltrating our county, and they don't know their criminal record, and more are coming. There's a documentary titled "Seattle is Dying" that I watched recently. It clearly portrays the truth that police are not given authority, and without intervention, the homeless are overtaking these cities. The cities are dying and full of crime. We do not want our cities to be like Portland or Seattle. This is another issue, and I do see that the police and the city councilors and the community are all scrambling to find answers as crime rates go up and more people come in. I am just here to I'm seeing that this amendment there's an urgency in this amendment to protect our Second Amendment rights, and it's an important step in protecting our county and our families.
Thank you.
Hey, Jim, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jim Kreutzbender, 1316 Northeast 9th in McMinnville. I've been listening to all the people here, and I think this meeting has drawn the responsible gun owners and people that use their guns for hunting, for defending their farms, for target practicing, and law enforcement people. It's those fringe elements that are not here and who have the guns. And maybe they're criminals or maybe they're just out having fun, but those are the people that are causing the problems in society. And whether they're influenced by other people or the internet, hate groups, or such, those are the people that are inflicting violence on the community at large. And so in reaction to violence and killings, that legislatures propose gun laws that may be more restrictive than what is necessary. I think, well, some people here are hunters. Well, I do believe, having been a hunter in my youth, that the state ODFW regulates the size and type of gun and the amount of shots you can fire or put in a magazine and a gun for hunting other animals. But for human beings, some groups don't want any restrictions on that for killing other human beings. I mean, sure, in defense, that may be entirely appropriate. But when the people with mental problems or hate groups or such have access to these weapons, untold violence happens. I would hope that the people here, the gun owners here would, well, let me go back, that, in response to state or national legislation to force back gun rights, you get pushback from national gun organizations and state gun organizations, but people like that are at this meeting now who actually love their guns and know the Second Amendment. They should be proposing some legislation or something so these fringe groups can't get, and individuals can't get guns or access to guns. You can't just, I wouldn't think you would be able to just pass them down through the family to some people that may not be mentally stable to handle a gun. So, but in relation to this sanctuary vote that you proposed today, that the people who proposed this amendment, they're here in force to state their views, which is very good, but I think the record should be left open for a week or 2 weeks. So I didn't know about this till yesterday, and I think the record should be left open for other people to be able to make comments, or in fact, I don't care about the cost. Maybe it should be a county vote. I mean, people here expressed their values about freedom and liberty. Well, let's have some freedom and have a free vote. I mean, we have elected you folks to be our commissioners and to decide amendments about running this about running the county, but this isn't really about running the county. This is a statement, a political statement, a rights, constitutional rights statement. But I think everybody in the county should have a right to express their opinion on this through a vote. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, we'll move forward then with Lance Brown and Austin Wright. Is there an Austin Wright? Here he comes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sure.
Very well.
I just come here and just want to say my support for this.
Lance, can I state your name and address for the digital record, please?
My name is Lance Brown, live on Jefferson Street, Lafayette, Oregon. I'm a cancer survivor, and I'm also a part-time armed security officer in the state of Oregon. I've been on the dangerous streets and stuff too, just as armed security companies do many protection details that law enforcement does. And I just wanted to say also that it's so funny that so many people don't want the county to fight against state or federal gun laws, but they turn around and demand marijuana be legalized and for states and counties in some states to fight federal law against it. And I think very much this represents that very many people, many of them have a mindset like that in Salem, just want to pick and choose what rights they want to enforce and obliterate other laws. I carry a weapon for my job and everything, and these bills, especially 501 and these two independent semi-auto bans and mag bans, will decimate the private security industry in the state. There's no exceptions for security guards at all in the state, even though we are DPSST, the same training organization that trains the police. We are trained by them too, in their private security wing, and we will be forced to go back to the 1800s for our firearms to do our duty, and we're coming against gangs and stuff who ignore the law. with the modern firearms and everything, which is ridiculous. And I think very much the county has the right to do this. Overall, enforcement of these laws is up to the county law enforcement, but at the same time, there's been many states in Illinois, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina that have deadly sanctuary things, and they say, why not enforce these? And the laws in the other big cities and stuff can attack us, but at the same time, this is our right. Oregon Constitution and the federal Constitution say we have the right to keep and bear arms, and it shall not be infringed. So, in many ways, these people are trying to ignore the Constitution or obliterate it to build some sort of new government or so. We need to stand up and say, no, we have, our founders have made the ultimate law in the land. There is a law that people can pass, but there is the ultimate law, our founding of our Constitution, which is the Bill of Rights. And the First and Second Amendment are constantly under attack, and I think it's time for Americans to say, enough. There are certain things that you cannot legislate away. If you like gun or not, that's a personal choice. Don't enforce it on me or people that work like me or enjoy recreational shooting also. This is a fundamental right, and I'd say pass this ordinance and bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Okay, Austin, go ahead, Austin.
How's it going? I'm Austin, live at 23155 Northeast Sunnycrest Road. To the sheriff, commissioners, and staff, I appreciate the opportunity for us to be able to speak to you today. I'm here to propose that you guys pass this. The Second Amendment has been around for 200 years, over 200 years, and is kind of steadfast in our Constitution. It was the second most important thing that the Founding Fathers could think of to protect everything else on that list. This wouldn't just be a danger to civilians, but law enforcement officers alike, as I feel like they should have to follow and abide by the same laws that we're regulated by, in consideration to the magazine capacity limits. That could be a tremendous danger to law enforcement. As we've all seen, lots of law enforcement involved shootings that are often individuals intoxicated, narcotics, alcohol, the like. 5 rounds is simply not enough to put people like that down. Not to mention multiple threat situations. That goes for the private citizens as well. In our home, 5 rounds is not going to be enough for me to stop 2 or 3 armed assailants, especially if they're under the influence of narcotics. That goes for a rifle, handgun, any type of weapon that's just simply not going to be enough. So that's all I have for you guys.
Okay, thank you, Austin. Okay, I have Charles Mays. Charles?
My name is Charles Mays. I live at 9989 Northeast Trillium Lane in Newburgh, Oregon. And just for the record, I'm dressed for work, but I am not representing the company I work for.
I was like, hey, look.
But have that being said, I am a first responder for the company that I work for. So if you dig into something or somebody hits a pole or loses their power, I'm showing up first. And as the lady said back here, I do know what it's like to show up and be told, you turn me off, I'm going to kill you. I've had it multiple times in the year and a half that I've been doing it. And my company has fallen victim to the I-5 corridor and has made it that we can't even have a weapon on the property in our own personal vehicle if we were going hunting or fishing or something of that nature. So we have no way of protecting ourselves whatsoever. And I stand here and I'm in support of this, but I am sorry that you folks have been put in this position by the state. I really am. And I noticed that you guys are all elected officials, and you've all had to take that sworn oath to do your job, to do the best you can, regardless of your personal opinions. You've had to decide to do the best for this county, correct? Just like our state people have and our sheriffs have. And, I just keep looking at the last time I did jury duty here also, Judge Tishner told us that when you make your decisions, you can't use your personal opinions. You have to base everything solely off the law, and your personal opinions can't count in this. So I would hope that when you guys get put in this position to, if you do vote on this, that you would not take your personal opinions and do your professional opinions on this decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Now, I want to go for one more time. I know that I have a couple here that didn't respond the first time, so I'll try for last time. Daniel Kalick. Is Daniel Kalick here? Daniel Daunt. Or he's already showed up. So those two are not here. So did anybody fill out a card that has not had a chance to testify? What's your name?
Ron Simmons.
Let me see if I can find a card for you, Ron. And if you don't,
I don't know what happened to it.
well, that's right. We can get you another one. Come on forward then.
Thank you. My name's Ron Simmons, 2170 Northeast Riverside Drive in Woodmanville, Oregonian all my life. In 2015, our state politicians quickly passed Senate Bill 941, the Oregon Firearms Safety Act. Senate Bill 941 outlawed most private transfers of firearms to include family, friends, and in innocent circumstances. It got no Republican votes. 23 Oregon counties opposed it. It served no law enforcement purpose whatsoever. And a number of county sheriffs in our state said they opposed it and would not enforce it. When that's going on, we got something wrong. Anyway, when Senate Bill 941 was first proposed, I followed online information from Oregon Firearm Federation, and incidentally, if somebody's not in, you need to join them if you're a gun person in Oregon. They're the best people for us. Explaining the unfairness of this bill. There were rumors of Michael Bloomberg money doing this. He's the multi-billionaire gun grabber, ex-mayor in New York City. He's already bought and paid for these laws in several other states. Several months before the bill was passed, a day was designated for our politicians to hear from we the people on this matter. This was held on the main lower floor of the state capitol building. There were hundreds of polite Oregonians wanting to be heard. I got there early so I could sit front and center and actually watch our politicians in action, especially our state senator Floyd Przansky, sponsor of this bill. There were so many people, all available rooms were full, and chairs and monitors had to be set up in the halls and the overflow areas. As regulations go, first come, first served sign-up sheet got to speak. The meeting formally started at 8 o'clock a.m. A meeting with a magnitude of people like this, with so many people to be heard like this one, and this one did, should have lasted several hours. Legally, it has to go a minimum of 2 hours. At straight up 10 o'clock, Senator Floyd Przansky and company slammed their book shut, did an about face, and they were gone, with a parting message from Floyd Przansky saying, further testimony, send it to suchandsuch.com. This meeting was held as a legal formality only. The voice of all the Oregonians meant nothing. I watched it. Months later, the law is passed, and our Oregon politicians received a check from Michael Bloomberg for $250,000. Look it up. So folks, it's happening again, only much, much worse. Michael Bloomberg has dumped $80 million into the National Democratic pot to reward gun grabbing laws in states. Look that up. If only $250,000 bought that Senate Bill 941, look what the state's got to do with several million that they can have. The politicians I watched were elected to serve, protect, and listen to the will of the people, none of which I witnessed. A sheriff's job is to listen to, serve, and protect his people. I thank God Yamhill County has one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that will end our public comment section then, and so at this time, what I'd like to do is turn it over first to our legal counsel for comment, any comments he may have and the direction we may want to go or not go, and then to our sheriff for comments.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a few things. I've had a chance to discuss this with each of you individually, but I wanted to remind you that the ordinance in the form it was received by the commission earlier this week is actually drafted in the form of a ballot measure. It's not actually drafted in the form of an amendment that the Board of Commissioners could act on today. And I was able to speak with a gentleman who was involved in the drafting of the ordinance, and he confirmed that that's the way the ordinance is currently drafted. So it isn't meant to be voted on as a county ordinance in the form it is before you today. If the board were interested in considering it as a county ordinance, it would need to be revised and resubmitted. And then we would follow our standard ordinance process unless the board wanted to declare an emergency. If it is not an emergency, then those ordinances are read on at least 2 different occasions at 2 separate meetings, at least 13 days apart. That gets to some of the notice and opportunity to comment issues that we heard from folks earlier. So as it's drafted today, it isn't in a form that would be appropriate for you to act on. As I said, it could be revised and brought back if the board were interested in considering that. When a Second Amendment preservation ordinance came before the board back in 2015, at that time, the board decided not to adopt the ordinance, but I believe that ordinance was also driven, at least in part, by concerns about legislation that was then moving through Salem, in particular Senate Bill 941. So what the board did at that time is adopt a resolution. That's certainly another option that is before the board to consider today. Those are really the only other comments I have in terms of the structure of the document. If you guys had any other questions for me, or if you want to hear from the sheriff now, and then we can have further discussion later.
I have one for you, Christian. I know when we conserved, you had talked with, if one of the things that the commission were to decide to do is put it on the ballot, the potential cost, I think you had a conversation with the clerk.
Well, that thank you for reminding me. That's right. We did. There was a little bit of discussion on Tuesday about possibly referring this or a similar ordinance from the commissioners, to the ballot. If the board were to do that, I did talk to the clerk. Depending on the election that measure might appear on, if it were the only item, the estimated cost of that to the county would be about $80,000. If this is a measure that comes through an initiative petition where folks gather signatures, which is something we did see last year. There was another preservation ordinance that did go through the process with the clerk. It was deemed appropriate for folks to start gathering signatures, but then unfortunately, I don't know why it didn't happen, but it never did. It was never brought back to the clerk with sufficient signatures to be put onto the ballot. In that situation, there is no cost. So an initiative petition like that does not cost. But if the county were to refer, or if, say, special districts or cities or other governments ask for items to be put on the ballot, the cost is divided among however many issues appear on the ballot. So if we are the only issue, then we bear all the cost. If there are 20 other issues on the ballot, then that cost is divided 20 ways. I did speak to the clerk. There is legally an opportunity to have an election in September, but that hasn't happened historically very frequently. The next date would be in November of this year, but at this point there are no other items set for that election yet. So, but yes, referring a ballot ordinance like this would be another option. if the board
Okay,
chooses to do
Mary,
that.
questions?
Mr. Chair, yes, Mr. Furnish, I had a question. So we said that if it was just that one particular election, one item on the ballot, that would be 80,000. Do we have any more estimates for future elections, maybe a general election?
Yeah, the clerk said the next election, he would suggest something like that might appear on, to keep the cost lower, would be the May 2020 election, where there are expected to be a larger number of items on the ballot.
Any estimate for us?
I didn't get an estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's it for you. Okay, Casey?
I think
Any
I'm good.
questions?
Yeah.
Okay, no other questions. Thank
You
you,
have any more?
Christian. I don't have any more. Let's turn it over to the sheriff. Sheriff?
Yes, thank you. Do I get to stay here, or do you guys want me
No,
to go
you
down
can
there?
sit right
Okay,
there.
well, I'm not used to sitting up here, and I'm glad that I'm normally out there. But I wrote down a few things, and of course, I was jotting down some notes as we were going through it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come here and talk to you guys, and of course, all the citizens that have come out to talk about this. As the elected sheriff of Yamhill County, it's my duty under RS 206010 to serve as the chief executive officer and conservator of the peace of the county. There's no other higher law enforcement authority in the county, and I take my role and the 5 tenets of that position under RS very seriously. Any changes to U.S., Oregon, or local lawful orders impact my responsibilities and those of the individuals I have sworn to execute those responsibilities in my office. My office works diligently to respect the rights of all citizens of Yamhill County and faithfully and impartially perform the duties of those positions. I'm sure you're all aware that I support the Second Amendment very highly of the Constitution, and having testified before Oregon legislature on Senate Bill 941, I was able to be present for the process that they had. The attendants have come down and will testify. When we got there, the room was already filled by an organization that got bussed in from Portland that was in direct support of 941. 2 individuals on those buses were armed security members that were hired to provide security for the same individuals that did not want that to be there. And with Senate Bill 941, as I addressed in my testimony there, is that there are a lot of scenarios where bad people get their hands on guns and commit heinous crimes. And the job of the sheriff and the job of law enforcement is to keep those guns out of those individuals' hands. In that particular situation, the law that was being proposed would not have prevented any of the heinous incidences that were testified in support of that bill. They had already owned the guns. They had got them through a third party in a different way. They stole them. They bought them on the street. But none of the private transfer issues came into play. And since that law has been passed, it's been clear for my staff that I have indicated to them, because I am required to uphold all the laws that are sent down from Salem, whether I agree with them or not. However, in our office, that hasn't a priority in our enforcement. It's a tool that we have available to us, that if there is the right opportunity where a criminal gets their hand on a gun and they commit a crime, and they did that by buying it from a friend and they didn't process it the right way, that's just another charge we're going to add on to all the other already misdemeanor and felony crimes that they've already committed. So I think the important thing, I think someone had indicated a forum. I'm not necessarily advocating that we have forums all the time to talk about things, but I think the dialogue and the conversation needs to start changing. The dialogue and conversation in the state of Oregon isn't necessarily specifically about tying the hands of current legal gun owners who follow the law. It should be talking about what is exactly behind the issues that we see on a national basis and in Oregon. Oregon has one of the lowest incidents of gun-related violence per capita, but mass shootings and school shootings in particular generate an enormous amount of publicity, perpetrating fear regardless of where the incident occurred. Elected sheriffs in Oregon work to balance the rights of those law-abiding citizens with the need to provide public safety and security from individuals who should not have access to guns. Some of the problems that we've addressed and identified as precursors to gun-related violence fall into 3 major areas of concern. Mental health services. Oregon rates 49th in the nation in providing access to mental health services for those who need it. 40,000 Oregonians have severe or ongoing mental illness, and 78% of students who committed acts of school violence exhibited a history of suicide attempts or suicidal thoughts. Appropriate and impactful school security measures. I think someone had made a comment about marijuana. Currently in the state of Oregon, marijuana dispensaries are legally required to have a much higher level of security than our Oregon schools. And then failure to appropriately address early criminal activity. When a person engages in a mass shooting event, they were already violating a huge number of state and federal laws, and they were committing multiple felonies and were already known to local law enforcement. So, engage solutions. As elected sheriffs in Oregon and in our individual counties, we've collectively, through the Oregon State Sheriffs Association, believe that addressing the above stated areas of concern have the additional effect of decreasing gun violence and increasing public safety in Oregon. Specifically, we believe that addressing the mental health needs of individuals and creating impactful school security measures will go far in reducing gun-related violence. And some of the reasonable effective solutions we proposed include: why don't we start increasing funding for mental health response and mobile crisis response teams in the community? Promote student wellness and enhance youth suicide prevention efforts. Increase funding for mental health services within our communities. Implement a statewide school safety and prevention system that includes the creation of multidisciplinary school safety assessment teams and support systems. So now locally, for my role as the elected sheriff in Yamhill County, it's my duty to enforce the laws of the U.S. Constitution and the Oregon State Constitution while addressing the unique interests of Yamhill County citizens. I work to do this by coordinating and collaborating with county agencies, private providers, local citizens to address the problems in the county within the confines of the constitutional parameters I'm sworn to uphold. My office works in concert with county HHS, local school districts, and grassroots and nonprofit organizations, including NAMI and the Community Wellness Collective in Newburgh, to address the needs of our citizens and effectively address the issues we believe lead to gun-related violence. This work to reduce gun-related violence and increase public safety while preserving the Second Amendment rights for the citizens we serve is paramount to my role as the conservator of the peace. My role in OSSA, I would like to reassure you that myself and the other 35 elected sheriffs in Oregon are working with state legislators to address these issues of gun-related violence by working to develop and support effective legislation that addresses the factors that contribute to gun violence. We work to balance the Second Amendment rights of all Oregonians with the need to promote public safety by keeping guns out of the hands of those who should not have access to them, while not tying the hands of local law-abiding citizens. As a member of the executive board of the Oregon State Sheriffs Association, I'm personally involved and invested in continuing the working relationship the OSSA has with the state and local governments to develop prescriptive concepts that will be fair and enforceable.
Any questions for the sheriff, Mary?
Yes, Sheriff. First of all, I want to thank you for standing up against the Senate Bill 941. Appreciate you going down to Salem. I know that wasn't easy, especially when you've got busloads of people who are to the contrary of what your position was, but thank you for that. So the way we have the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance, the way it's written now, I understand from county council that there are concerns about county liability, whether or not it would stand up. There are all variety of different issues with this particular ordinance. Do you see, and this is just hypothetical, do you see that if we were to perhaps rework the wording of this ordinance to where county council had a little less heartburn about whether or not the county was in violation of any laws, whether we would incur any liability, do you see, as a sheriff, the value perhaps in supporting an ordinance that would recognize, as with Senate Bill 941, that you are not actively enforcing that, but since the laws are on the books, you will enforce it in the commission of a crime, for instance. So when we have a room full of people here who are law-abiding citizens who would immediately upon passage of these laws become felons and would face jail time, significant financial fines, considering that, would you be amenable to supporting an ordinance that would make Yamhill County a sanctuary from those types of laws? And we're talking about magazine capacity and all that. Virtually every modern firearm now becomes illegal, and then we become felons for possessing them, for driving up to the airport at midnight to pick up a spouse with a concealed handgun. So these are the things that I understand people here are concerned about. And I'm just wondering what kind of support we could expect from your office.
So I think the first question comes down to the conversation of legality, which has been a conversation statewide from all sorts of the sheriffs up in Washington. I just came back from the Western State Sheriffs Association conference where there's 19 Western states, and this is obviously a conversation that has been going on for years. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a struggle for sheriffs, as elected sheriffs, even in the state of Oregon. And some of our most conservative sheriffs even struggle with the concept of having anything that restricts their ability to uphold their oath. However, there are laws on the books that I don't agree with. Senate Bill 941 is a perfect example. I think there is a very important time and place for that law to be enforced, and our staff would enforce that law when it was needed. But the intent behind it isn't to tie the hands of all the citizens that are sitting out here. I think if you had something drafted where it gives us the ability to, one, send a message to Salem that we're standing up to the issues that we continue to see coming through there, but also gives us the ability to make our position very well known across the state, I think that's something that our office would be able to get behind.
Thank you.
Casey, any questions for the sheriff?
No, I think that Commissioner Starrett answered the question that I would have had for you, which is really that one about the legality. Yeah, and I was hearing that from some people up there too.
Yeah, I think again, like Commissioner Starrett and Commissioner Kula, I think the legality, I'm concerned with things like preemption of state law, things about the legality, things that not only impact the new laws that would take effect, but current laws that are potentially on the book, that are current laws that are on the books that may change how we have to enforce those. So if it was worded right, I don't like, even the one we got this morning, there were some big issues on that for me. And if we could come back with something that you could buy into, that we feel legal counsel feels it does not impact the state, and in the form of maybe a resolution, I don't know if I'd want an actual a resolution. I think I could support a letter. I said earlier I could support actually doing something that makes it a law in Yamhill County. I may have a little bit of issue with, but I'd have to see what would be proposed that we do. So,
well, one of the things I would say is, as we continue to move down this area, we have to be able to find a way to change that dialogue in Salem, and that's where a lot of help needs to be. That's where a lot of the conversations from the community need to be had. Is that I've always said that our law-abiding citizens who have guns, who like to competitively shoot, who like to hunt, who like to collect, it's a hobby. Those are not the people that law enforcement needs to be worried about. Those are not the people that we should be passing laws to prevent future criminal activity from happening. We have a lot of laws on the books right now that we have dealt with, and what has happened over time is that we've ignored those laws, and we continue to knee-jerk react to passing a law that we think is going to feel good. When at the end of the day, law enforcement still wants to do things. We still work with legislatures. There was a loophole with the domestic violence. If you've been convicted of a domestic violence crime, that's a misdemeanor. There was a loophole in there where there was no actual formal requirement for the person to, it says they have to give up their guns, but there was no process to follow through to make sure that happened. Now, what the state wanted to do is to basically put that on me and make me go to the district attorney and file for a search warrant to go get that gun. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. That's on that individual. They got convicted of the crime. They need to turn it in. We've got processes in order for them to do that. Through the FAPA and ERPO, it's the exact same process. It seems to work very well. They're there for a very important reason. We support those types of laws that are on the books. It's all these other ones where they want to just randomly change the mag capacity, the assault rifle conversation that continues to come up. Those don't do anything to prevent crime, in my mind. They They just make people feel good that they're tough on guns, and that's not the message that we should be showing.
I really appreciate that. I would love to see a dialogue as well, because across the political spectrum, I hear both misconceptions and a desire to actually talk about it. So thank you.
So commissioners, what we were asked to do today is consider declaring Yamhill County a Second Amendment sanctuary county. That's what we were asked to do. So we can go on and either entertain a motion to do that, or we could go for further discussion, or ask for consensus for the sheriff to work with legal counsel to give something that may be tolerable, that doesn't put our county in jeopardy, or doesn't put the sheriff in jeopardy, but yet sends a strong signal to Salem that we don't like what doing, because it started at the federal level, now it's getting down to it got down to the state level, now it's getting down to the county level, it'll get down to the city level, where this is getting so divisive, now that nobody can agree with anything. And so that's the way I would like to go forward, but I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner, because you brought it on.
Well, I would like to make a motion at this time, if I can, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion that we consider a sanctuary ordinance, one that obviously there are flaws and concerns about the one that's before us now. We have had concerns about people not being able to read it, to see it. I know we've had conflicting versions of it that have gone around. But I think resolutions are fine, but I don't think they do anything. I think that we can send a message all we want to Salem. We know that Salem isn't listening, and we know that we certainly have a room full of people who are frustrated with that. So what I would like to say is that I would ask that, in consultation with the sheriff and with county council, we come back with an ordinance that has some substance to it, so that the people feel some measure of protection, other than we passed a resolution, we got our point across to Salem. Salem isn't going to care about our resolution, but the residents of this county are going to feel that they've been heard, and that the measure we passed today does have some significant teeth to it. Because myself, I feel that we've seen an inordinate amount of bad gun laws. One of them was the Fugitive Slave Act. And Frederick Douglass said that the remedy for the Fugitive Slave Act, for those of you who weren't following, basically that meant that if a slave was being beaten and ran away, you could shoot him in the back, and that was completely lawful. And we're sitting here talking about upholding laws. There are some laws that shouldn't be upheld. And I think that we're seeing some laws on the book that will make me, today, a felon. And I'm not prepared to give up my gun, and I'm not prepared to give up your gun. So I think we need something with a little bit more teeth, but I do defer to county council to give us something that protects the county, but then protects the citizens.
Okay.
Commissioner Stare, is that a motion? I'm not sure, because
Yes.
I don't mean that in any disrespect. I'm really working hard on learning the process of how to do this, and so I want to. It was can you restate that as a motion?
It was a motion that we have county council and Sheriff Svensson to work to bring us an ordinance that is palatable.
And we can talk more
Sanctuary
about this,
ordinance.
but sanctuary, so that in Yamhill County, we would prohibit law enforcement from enforcing state law.
We would, correct.
Is that what?
That's what this is
And
all
that's what
about.
this ordinance would do. Is that the kind of ordinance you would like us to bring back?
That's
Because
what
I don't think we can do that without.
Hold on, please.
I'm telling you now, we won't be able to do that without running into the same conflicts that are in the current ordinance. That area is expressly preempted by state law. The legislature has said that they are the exclusive regulator of firearms in the state. And if we tell our law enforcement that they can't enforce state law, I think we run afoul of that.
Do you want to revise your motion?
No.
Okay.
Casey?
Now, if the majority of the board wants us to come back with an ordinance like that, we can talk about doing that. But that's the concern that I have in part with this ordinance, and if that is the instruction and the direction to sort of try to come back with another ordinance that would still create some sort of a sanctuary in Yamhill County from state law, we're going to have that same problem.
Casey? Comments?
On
To-
the,
on the
reopen
mo-
the
on the
discussion
motion,
on
yeah.
your motion.
That's what discussion is open on Mary's
Okay,
motion.
that's good. I wasn't sure what stage we were.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I want to go with county council on this one. I think that it has become clear to me. The one thing, there was some confusion about we refer a ballot measure, the proponents of the ordinance refer a ballot measure, we have proposed. And so I've kept that in the back of my head as we're listening here. And so while I don't think it's appropriate for us to, the three of us as commissioners, to direct staff to do something that they are very clearly very uncomfortable and don't think is possible for them. I recognize that all these folks out here took, what are we at? We're at 4 hours. You all took 4 hours to be here, and I really appreciate that. All of you, I got to make eye contact so that I make sure I'm not excluding anybody with different viewpoints. And Jacob, it's really nice to see you specifically since we actually haven't met in person yet. So I would respect that. And I also know that at least Nick Morache, he said once that he could do Morache, and I really like it. It's a little bit more attitude. I would encourage you to go the initiative-led petition or initiative petition route, and then that decision can be decided. But as far as the constitutionality of it, and it can be decided by voters. I'm very hesitant for the commissioners to refer to voters something that's not what. I think that the county commissioners need to have a conversation among us and including you about what things we refer to voters and what we don't. And to me, it's the structure of our governance is the things that I would want to refer to voters from the commissioners. How many people we have, that kind of thing. But I know that there's a lot of energy, and I know that there's dollars behind it, and I know that you can do it, and you probably will. So I'm talking to you, but I should be talking to them, sorry. So to that
We're
end.
listening, we're listening.
To that end, I would encourage us to not pass as commissioners the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Casey. I guess my feeling about it is, and I talked about a few of these things a little bit earlier, is I'm really concerned when a county who's not responsible for, we're not a home rule county, we're a general law county that says we will uphold all the laws of the state of Oregon along with the Constitution of the state of Oregon. I really think we're on a slippery slope by doing these kind of, number one, doing these kind of ordinances. I agree, I'm a Second Amendment person. I think everybody should be able to bear arms, but at a local government level, I think what's happening is our government is breaking down at the federal level, it's breaking down at the state level, and now it's getting down to where it's starting to really affect local government, the municipalities and the counties. And I really honestly don't think that's where we should be spending our time. I think where we should be spending our time is on the operations of the things that really impact Yamhill County, to make government better from Yamhill County. I think the other thing that concerns me is an ordinance like this, the precedents it could potentially set for other similar, what I'll call constitutional, even social type ordinances. Somebody wants now to come next week and wants, let's say 2 weeks from now, wants us to pass an ordinance to make Oregon a sanctuary county. You know, immigration sanctuary county. I mean, what do we do? I think those are discussions we have to have at the council. So therefore, I'm also, at least in the version that I was given, and I know Mary would like staff to come back to another one, but anything that I think that, and I appreciate Christian, because I think anything that we do, that whether the law passes or doesn't pass, we're setting ourselves up for liability, whether it's constitutional or civil. And I just don't think that's a position for the county to be in, because I don't think it's our responsibility. So I would have to agree with you, Casey, that we do not adopt this ordinance.
I'm sorry, I just have
Oh,
one
go
question
ahead.
for the
Yep.
sheriff.
Mhm.
So Sheriff, on Senate Bill 941, and I know you testified against it, and you say that it's not typically something that you enforce, so that you're not violating Senate Bill 941, you're just not enforcing that law, correct?
Yeah, there's so many laws on the books that, if I have an area where we think there's a traffic crime issue or traffic violations, and we go out and we dedicate time and energy to dealing with traffic safety. This isn't a law that's on the books that my staff are out actively looking for people who are violating. We use it more as an additional tool, an additional charge. So yes, it's on the books, but our staff isn't out actively looking for people who violate this law. But if the perfect circumstance comes to play, they will enforce it if they need to. It's the luxury of the discretion that we have for law enforcement as a whole.
So then, Christian, does that put the county in any kind of liability because the sheriff has that policy about not enforcing that law?
No, that's the kind of discretion that law enforcement exercises every day.
Okay.
And I just remembered Joe, the detective. Eubanks. I wrote his comment down too because I thought that was really important. That he said we don't. He said the same thing as you, but he testified at the desk, and I thought, okay, so there's some of these. There's apparently 27 bills. Is that? I saw 19, but there may be 27.
Yeah, is it a total of 27?
But when I read through the initial, there's a thumbnail description of them, because I apologize, I have a lot to read, and so I only read the thumbnails. Maybe a third of them are actually, here, have a tax credit to buy a gun safe. Here's a tax credit to buy a trigger lock. So it seems like there are some of the remainders that you may be able to enforce with discretion.
Yeah, I
imagine you might do that.
But we as sheriffs across the state, we're working really hard to keep even those off the books.
Thank you.
And I think we have gotten to the point where a lot of the ones that I was really, really concerned about, according to our legislative lobbyists, some of those are not even going to see the light of day based off of some of the work that we've been doing, where we have redirected the conversation to the important areas, the ones that we in law enforcement don't think should be the issues that we should be dealing with. So by working together with them, I think we've been able to successfully navigate some of those really prescriptive ones off the table. The issue is there's always that possibility, and it seems like every 2 years we come up with the same conversation, and they continue to bring it back. The sheriffs continue to put their foot down when it comes to Second Amendment, and we make it pretty clear down in Salem that we need to redirect the conversation to deal with issues that we are actually seeing in the community that are causing issues for us. It's not the fact that people have an assault rifle or a magazine that can hold more than 5 rounds. It's the fact that we have individuals who are suffering from mental health issues and diagnosis and alcoholism, drugs, you name it. We need to get them services, and that's where we should be dealing and spending our time.
Can we clap for that one? Come on, people. Great. Okay, thank you for
Christian. Yeah, and if I could just add on to what the sheriff's saying and to your question, Commissioner Sterrett, the ordinance would actually prohibit law enforcement from exercising that discretion. And that's a major concern because it wouldn't allow them to then enforce those laws if they found a point in time where it would be appropriate to do that, and it would actually criminalize that behavior, right? If they tried to enforce one of those laws, they would then themselves be in violation of the ordinance, and that's sort of the catch-22 impossible box it puts law enforcement in.
My understanding was in the verbiage was that there were exceptions when there was criminality involved.
There are certain exceptions, but it's in its current form nowhere clear enough, I think, for me, and I can't speak for the sheriff, to understand when and how they might or might not be able to enforce. And again, I should say this doesn't apply to just future laws. This would prohibit enforcement of existing laws as well, which I think we would need to spend a lot more time if we wanted to sort of parse down to that level of when they might or when they might not have, or if the exceptions here would allow them to continue to effectively perform their job.
Well, I think at this point, I mean, I would call for the question.
Okay.
And again, my motion, just to restate it,
Yeah.
was that if we were to reword this so that we removed some of the glaring concerns that we had about existing laws and future laws, would this be something that, the motion is if we could have county council work with the sheriff's office to rework the sanctuary ordinance to where it was more palatable. That is my motion, and then bring it back for a vote.
Okay. Okay, so we have a question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Nay. Let it show that Commissioner Sterrett voted in the affirmative and Commissioners Kula and Olson voted in the negative, and I'm sure we haven't heard the end of this discussion. It's just too bad that the state and the federal government puts the counties and the cities into these situations, because they're not a situation we should be, they're not a situation we should be in.
And like we talked about, there are some other options the board can consider. I
Right.
don't know if you want to have that conversation now or save that for another day. I believe you had a letter that you had proposed,
Initially.
or a resolution.
Yeah, initially I wanted the board to basically write a letter in opposition to the majority of these bills. And the other is a resolution to oppose these bills at the county level. So if there was any appetite for a resolution to oppose, when we can call out the specific laws that we had concerns with.
Casey?
It's a motion.
So that was the other option that Christian brought up. That was just one of the things. So
Well, sorry.
So yeah, I would make a motion that, in light of what just happened with the sanctuary ordinance make a motion that we, as a board, adopt a Second Amendment preservation ordinance and pass it as a board.
Ordinance or a resolution?
I'm sorry, resolution.
I'm happy to entertain it, but I'd love to see it.
Actually, okay, so.
And I haven't seen it. I
Well,
apologize.
and we did, the board did adopt a resolution back in 2015.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I haven't read it. Apologize.
You know, so certainly make sure that you all have
Yeah.
copies of that, and then we can discuss any changes you might like to see, and then the specific legislation that you might want to reference, or if you wanted to make any other specific statements about Second Amendment rights, or anything else you wanted to add.
Yeah, I do believe that there, a resolution that's a non-binding ordinance, that we could all probably get behind, if it was worded right, get behind a non-binding resolution stating what are really, and I'd like the, maybe the sheriff to have some wording in that even though it's non-binding about some of the things you brought up.
You guys get to write the laws, let's.
Well, we would like your input,
Yes,
though,
I would
Sheriff.
provide input.
Well, I've got a lot of notes from what you said, so I think.
Okay, I'm sorry for not answering any questions. The comment period's empty. So the public comment period is open, and I think we have a consensus then that we're going to ask staff, and we as commissioners will look at the preservation ordinance that was done in 2015, wasn't it?
I'll look at it.
Resolution.
2000, we'll take at that and see if we can come up with a non-binding resolution. that
And I think
When you say
even one of the
non-binding-
authors might be in the
Well,
back.
a resolution by legally is non-binding.
Right.
So what I could do is prepare a draft resolution, circulate that for your review, the sheriff's review, and then maybe aim to bring that back before the board next week or the week after.
That's the best we can do. I'll take it, but.
Okay.
So I think that's probably the best we're going to get to, and I think we're all in consensus that we can do that if it's worded correctly. So I guess we'll give legal counsel direction to go ahead and prepare one of those based on it, and work with the sheriff, and we'll see what we get back. So we'll come then, Ken, on the agenda for next week. Is next week enough time, do you really think, the two of you, since you're going to work on it, or?
Just a reminder that if it's next week, I need to have it by noon tomorrow.
That's right. So I think we'll go I think we really need to go, not to rush things again. We need to go, since it is, tomorrow is Friday and is the deadline, that it really needs to go, since it's not, to me, an emergency, that we really need to get it out there. But not to create an emergency, so
And
it'd
again,
be-
it's just an internal, that we have a rule, but, I guess the earlier we can get it, because,
Yeah.
we want to make sure that we can get it in the packet so people can see it ahead of time, so we don't have a similar, where there's question
Right.
marks about
I
what's being
understand that, I
decided on.
understand that.
But the resolution's already been written, since it's already been passed.
It will be based in large part on the previous one. But if we want to allow folks more time to review, if you're comfortable with not having it come back next week and come back the following week, I think that's fine. There wouldn't actually be a declaration of an emergency or not, since it's simply a resolution, so we don't need to worry about that. But we would certainly try and get it to Ken and Carolina so they can get it posted up to the website as soon as possible.
Okay. Okay, so that, are you okay with 2 weeks to give them time so we can get it posted for people can look at it and everything?
Yeah, if that's. what we
Okay,
have
so
to
let's,
go.
let's shoot for
Okay.
2
You've got a
weeks.
good smile, so.
Okay, everybody, I'd like to really thank you all for coming. I know you spent over 4 hours of your time participating in this, and I really do appreciate these kind of discussions. And I wish more citizens would actually be involved in doing these kind of discussions, because the ideas of having these open dialogue discussions are very appreciative. I appreciate those much. I know the rest of the commission appreciates them.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
But we haven't adjourned yet.
Yes, I know.
No, we haven't adjourned yet, that's right.
Let me get back to my agenda very deep.
Because we have to go through.
Okay, going through the rest of our agenda, we have, we don't have any public hearings scheduled since we've been here 4 hours, and we did go over some announcements. Tuesday, we want to hold announcements till next Tuesday. I figure we probably would.
I can't even think of things I do.
So, Ken, do you have anything you want to bring up?
I think I have like 10 items that might go like 3 hours, but I'll hold it until next week.
And I'm sure Kristen doesn't have anything, and Justin, you probably don't have anything, do you?
No.
Didn't think so?
No time.
Meeting adjourned.
Okay. Thanks for,
Yeah,
I was looking over last week, we had the sheriff here like 10 hours.